And there it is, another successful promo. Hey, we're getting good at this stuff. Oops. I guess I spoke too soon. Gandalf and Amy, how you guys doing?
Pretty good, bro.
Hanging in. By the way, Aaron, what's up with your possible surgery?
Well, actually, I don't have a conclusive answer yet. I went to a urologist today and they took some imaging. Basically, they just took an x-ray. I have a history with kidney stones. And the last time I had one, it was like a 9 millimeter stone, and they had to do surgery on that one. But at the time, they told me that I had a 4 millimeter stone somewhere in my kidney that I could expect sometime in the future. Now, that was many years ago. And now I'm starting to feel some weirdness and discomfort in my lower abdomen right in that area. And I'm thinking I've got a stone on the move. So I saw a urologist today and they took an x-ray. And actually, while I'm almost there, I'm going to do another screen share. I want to show you guys something because I actually recorded my conversation with the doctor and I took a quick shot of my x-ray, and if I can just find it here. Where did it go? Where did it go? Oh, let's see what happened to it.
The computer elf stole it.
Yeah, it was here. Wait a minute, I think it's over here. I think, here it is. All right, check this out. On the audio.
Yeah.
So tell me again what you thought that was.
This is a phlebolith. Okay, right there's a phlebolith. This could be a stone. I don't know if that.
Okay. He said phlebolith. That's the word of the day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. The word of the day is phlebolith.
It's new to me.
Did you look that up in the dictionary by any chance?
Well, he told me what it was, and I even asked him to spell it, and I'll tell you what, right here.
Okay. So the best way to
spell that for me, phlebolith?
Yeah, PHLEBOLITH.
PHLEBLITH. Phlebolith. So basically, this thing up here where my mouse is, the one on top, it's a calcification. It's a vascular calcification. And he basically says that it's nothing to worry about. In fact, his wordage, listen to this.
Okay. So the best way to spell that for me, phlebolith? Yeah, PHLEBOLITH. Okay. It's just a vascular calcification in the vein which has no clinical meaning, but can confuse us if someone has a history of stones.
It has no clinical meaning. Do you hear what he said?
What?
What does it mean? It has no meaning.
Listen again.
Confuse us if someone has a history of stones. There's no clinical meaning, but can confuse
No clinical meaning.
I think you might need a new doctor, man.
But can confuse us if someone has a vein which has no clinical meaning, but can confuse us. BOLITH. Okay. It's just a vascular calcification in the vein which has no clinical meaning, but can confuse us.
Has no clinical meaning. I think you might be right, Gandalf. I might need a new doctor. That's like one of the weirdest things I've ever heard from a doctor. You've got this thing that showed up on the X-ray that has no clinical meaning.
Yeah,
Now, a friend of mine did look it up, and it turns out that it is what the doctor said. Basically, it's a calcification of a vein, and it didn't give any indication, and the doctor didn't give any indication that it was something to worry about, that it was anything that was causing pain. He was certain that this is not whatever problem that I'm having. However, there's one right there. There's a little spot below it, which could be a stone. And very likely could, I'm going to guess that it is, because this would be my 4th episode with kidney stones. And the last time I had to have surgery because it was so big. It was literally 9 millimeters. But the one that I'm pointing at right now, the one down low, I asked him if he could estimate from this image how big, and he said 3 to 4 millimeters. And that's not something that worries me, because I've already, previously I've already passed a stone the size of 4 millimeters. So
fun.
I mean, if that's what this is, then that's what this is. So here's the bottom line. Tomorrow I have an appointment for a CAT scan, a CT scan. And then I guess I'll know more, probably the first of the week after they scan me, and then send the info over to the doctor. And then he calls me with whatever they decide that they see. So, based on my history, I'm going to guess that it's a stone. The fact that I have a history with stones, and the fact that it feels like it did the last time I had a stone coming on. So, at this point in time, I don't know for sure if it is, but the doctor said that the symptoms that I'm having actually don't fit in with kidney stone. Because the time of day when I'm experiencing pain and the circumstance, he said, is not conducive. So that's basically where I am with that. It's still up in the air, and I don't really know for sure. What I do know is if it is a stone, and to be honest with you, the information that I wanted, really more than anything, what I wanted to know was, if it was a stone, how big is it? Is it something that's going to require surgery? And basically, I got that information. He said it was in the 2 to 3 millimeter range. 3 to 4 millimeter range, which means, to me, it sounds like something that's can be passed without surgery. So that's where I am. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome. Thanks for the info.
Well, Rupe, I wouldn't worry about it too much if you have had a history with this.
Well, I am worried about it because it's painful like a motherfucker.
Yes.
There's no, besides this little hint of a thing going on, when it decides to move, it's so fucking painful. It's like, no warnings. It's like someone has a voodoo doll with your name on it and they just jabbed a hot needle through your abdomen. That's what it feels like.
And do they remove that surgically, or?
Well, it depends on the size, really. Like I mentioned, I have previously passed already. I've passed a stone the size of 4 millimeters. Now, it was more like a meteor. It was kind of oblong, and it was about 2.5 millimeters wide by 4 millimeters long. But, I have had a history of actually passing a stone that was the size of 4 millimeters. And I somewhere I got a picture and even maybe a video of my old stone that I actually captured, because they gave me a strainer to pee through, because the doctor wanted it. They want to test it to see what what mineral it was made out of, because from what I understand, there's calcium stones, and then there are uric acid stones. So they wanted to know what kind it was. Now,
By the way, I just want to mention that Trobold, I think is what it is, came in and said to research urine therapy in distilled water.
Trobolt. I was actually going to just cover that actually just now before Amy piped up. I was going to talk about how I've actually changed my dietary intake, particularly liquids. I used to be a fucking Mountain Dew whore, and I never, ever, ever drank water. I never drank water. And I literally drank Mountain Dew like all day, every damn day. For years and years and years. It was like the only liquid intake that I had. And that went on for more than a decade. Maybe 2.
Wow.
And before that, like the first kidney stone I had, I was probably about 19 years old. And again, I wasn't drinking water. I was drinking soda and beer. And that was pretty much my only liquid intake for the better part of my younger life. Now, about 10 years ago, when I had surgery on that 9mm stone, was maybe right around the time when I literally dropped Mountain Dew altogether and soda. I haven't had, probably in the last 10 years, I could say for sure that I've not drank more than 3 full cans of soda. So that's how...
I'm proud of you.
Well, I wouldn't be too proud of me, because I switched Mountain Dew to coffee, water, and wine. So when it comes to water, I do drink distilled water, actually. That's the only water I drink, except for the zero water. And I've talked about this before, the zero water filter system, which honestly, it's about as close to like distilled water as you can get. And it comes with the little meter, the little electronic meter. You dip it in the water and it tells you what content. It doesn't tell you what's in there, but it gives you a readout of the mineral, like parts per million, whatever minerals might be in there. So I literally make coffee with zero water, and when right now I've got a big glass of zero water, and I've got a glass of wine sitting next to it. But I drink tons and tons of red wine, and I drink water, zero water, and I drink a lot of coffee. So that's, at least I don't drink soda anymore, right? So there's that.
Yeah, well, water and actually coffee isn't the worst. As long as you're not drinking gallons of it, in which case, the way I used to drink gallons, okay, of coffee every day. And then I started having extremely high heart rate and decided the only thing that could be doing it was all that caffeine. So I mostly stopped. Anyway.
But when we go out in the RV, we buy a bunch of gallons of distilled water. We don't drink water from the tap out of the RV. I just don't trust it. It's all a bunch of plastic pipes, and then you're using water from probably, fluoridated and who knows what kind of chemicals and minerals when you're hooked up to the system at any particular RV park. Plus, we bring our zero water filter system with us in case we run out or whatever. And so Nancy and I, plus the dogs and cats, we only drink distilled water usually. It's either distilled water or zero water. But I do think it's funny that that doctor said that it has no clinical meaning, but apparently it has a clinical name to it.
Yes. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
But I was at one of those like conventions. It was like a gun convention or a survival convention.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to this guy who was selling like a water filtration system, and he was doing like this little demonstration, and he had a couple of cups in front of and had different kinds of water in each cup. And he was showing you the different, mineral and salt content and the different, toxin contents and stuff. And he was talking about the acidity of soda. how acidic, like carbonated soda drinks are. And then he compared it to wine, and I was pretty surprised to find that soda is 2 to 3 times as acidic as wine.
Oh yeah.
Now I knew that wine was like, pretty acidic, and I know that wine has a lot of what are called sulfides, but I knew wine was acidic because, like, the Baghdad battery, right? You can actually generate a current, and wine is very, very good for doing this with 2 different metals and a little copper wire. You can actually generate a current. But I was just actually taken back when the guy showed me the difference, but how much more acidic that soda is over wine.
Well, when it comes to Coke, cops actually drive around with that stuff in their trunk. And if somebody gets splattered all over the side of the road, the only thing that'll clean off all the blood off the side of the pavement is Coca-Cola.
Oh, really?
Oh, jeez.
Really?
Yeah. So I wouldn't be ingesting any Coca-Cola.
No. I have no interest in that.
I remember a long, long time ago, somebody did an experiment where they showed how like an 8-penny nail will dissolve in a glass of Coca-Cola within a pretty, I don't remember how long, but a pretty darn short amount of time. It'll just dissolve an 8-penny nail.
Yep. And people put that stuff in their system.
That's delicious, though.
Ew. Maybe
I do crave.
Ew.
I do crave a soda every now and then.
I never liked soda.
But I have, I've changed my diet. I drink a hell of a lot more water, and I'm drinking like half a gallon of coffee every morning. Literally about 3 to 4 full cups, large cups. And so between that and water and wine, that's pretty much my liquid intake these days.
Dean's dude says, here we use Coca-Cola to clean toilets. It's about the best application I've heard.
Hey, Deans, haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So, Coca-Cola, I've read an article a couple years ago that some people in South America, like some of the poor farmers, actually spray Coca-Cola on their plants. And if I remember, it's some sort of pesticide. There's a particular kind of bug or a couple of bugs that don't seem to like it. When it comes to Mountain Dew, other people I've seen, and I can pretty much attest to this, that Mountain Dew will not grow like mold. Like if you have a cup of soda and you leave it sit out for, several days, it'll get like a mold layer on top of it.
Yep.
Mountain Dew won't do that.
All these drinks, man, something's off about all these fucking things. I wouldn't touch any of these, any type of pop, man. It's just pure sugar water, man. And the fact that it's that acidic is like revolting, man, honestly. I haven't drank pop or Coke, any type of thing like that in like almost like 6-7 years now.
Oh, look, John LeBon's in the chat.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So real quick, John, since you're listening, I got a question for you real quick. Based on the comment you left me on my last video, are you flat Earth? Because, you want me to believe that space is a hoax? So I'm just curious, what's your explanation? If space is a hoax, doesn't that mean that you're a flat Earth and what, we live under a dome? I'm just curious. I don't want to debate, just kind of want to know where you are. Johnny Supertramp's got a new Lift to Veil court trial video. That shit's funny, man. That whole series is hilarious.
It is. It makes my day every time I see one.
Yeah, I hope he keeps going with this.
Yeah, and he's pretty much using it as practice because he's trying to, get good at doing graphics. I think he's getting pretty good at it.
Oh, yeah.
So outer space is a hoax, but flat Earth is a joke. Well, maybe you could rectify that because I don't see how the two of those go together. That's, I mean, how is it, if flat Earth is a joke, then okay, John LeBon's not flat Earth. He's a ball Earth. He's a sphere Earth. How is it that we live on a sphere Earth and space is a hoax? Now what kind of model are we talking about?
That's a good question. I'm stumped.
What if we're in a hollow Earth, but it's flat?
You know.
Oh no.
I don't know, but I don't even want to go there, dude.
Okay, that's probably a good call, man.
The false dichotomy. Rufus Cat's still buying into the false dichotomy between flat Earth and spinning ball. Okay, so John LeBon suggests that there's something in between flat and round. So is it a tetrahedron? Is it an octahedron? Are you like on the bandwagon with Lord Stephen Christ? Are we living in a convex Earth? Are we brains in vats? Is this a hologram? I don't understand, John. But anyway, again, I don't want to do debate, especially not in the chat because there's a delay and it's just not the right platform. So Gandalf, what have you been up to, man?
Well, I've been kind of putting this off for a long time, man. For the longest time, like when I used to come on YouTube, I really wanted to avoid this subject, but here and there on Josh's Hangouts, I admitted to people that, yeah, okay, I have credence to the possibility that there is some type of creature that's unexplainable that lives in the woods. And, like people just like think it's hilarious. Like, and no, I totally understand that perspective that it's a ridiculous topic. But certain parts of the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, like, lends me to believe that it actually does exist. And, I'm not 100% certain, okay? So I'm not going to say 100% without a doubt I believe that there's a big, hairy ape-man living in the woods. But a lot of the information that's out there lends me to believe that maybe I'm in the 75% range that there is some type of creature in the woods that we call Bigfoot.
Okay, so some type of creature in the woods that we call Bigfoot. So I'm assuming that you're talking about a hairy bipedal thing that's been described by millions of people.
Yeah, that's it. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Yeti. I believe this thing exists. For the most part, I do believe it exists. I'm leaning towards it existing.
Lady Zaga said she has an experience with Bigfoot. I hope you're not talking about some guy you were dating. Okay, listen. All right, listen, I'm not trying to make fun, but there's going to be some jokes tonight, okay? And just so you know, I'm not throwing Gandalf under the bus, but I am going to be very skeptical. And we're pretty much going to operate tonight as though Gandalf were the guest. And I'm going to kind of interview Gandalf. And that's pretty much how we're going to run tonight. So just in case anybody's wondering, we're going to go ahead and explore the Bigfoot thing because it's something that Gandalf has been into for a long time. And so, yeah, man, we're going to go there. We're going to have a little bit of fun with it. We're not going to take ourselves too seriously tonight. And by the way, since we've got, 30, 31 people watching, I'll go ahead and make the announcement next week. We've got Michael Cremo as our guest. He's the author of Forbidden Archaeology and The Forbidden Archaeologist, a couple of books. And I think he's got Human Devolution is another book that he has written. So, yeah, that's what we have next week. And we're doing it, man. We're doing the Bigfoot thing tonight, so we're gonna have fun with it. And there's gonna be some jokes, but I don't mean any disrespect if I start cracking wise jokes. So there you go. And I'm sorry, Gandalf. I don't mean to, poo-poo the idea, but we're gonna talk about it and we're gonna have fun with it.
You know what? That's the only way to come at this topic. It's really the only way. Like, most people, when they hear Bigfoot, they think it's like the most ridiculous of all conspiracy, anything fringe related. Like, it just sounds like it's like the most out there topic of all. Beyond UFOs, Bigfoot, I would say, is at the top of the list for kooky subjects.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty fringy stuff, but it's not new though. It's pretty old though, right? Because like one of the questions I have for you in particular, and in fact, this question was spawned by a comment from Sandra Textera. I forget exactly what she said, but it made me think of this question that how old is the Bigfoot story? Do you know? And if you do know, is it older than claims of the Bible? I mean, like, are there Bigfoot stories that go back 2,000 years?
Oh, beyond that, there's stories that go back 3,000-4,000 years.
Okay.
It's one of the oldest human legends and tales that kind of is kind of shunned at slightly. But there's a lot of evidence for these things going back, way back, as far as human history begins to record it.
Keep your eye on the chat. Everybody's just cracking jokes. It's gonna be a fun night.
Yes, I think.
Okay, so all right, so Bigfoot is older or as old as the Bible. So you're saying as old as 4,000 years. The Bible is actually, if I'm not mistaken, the original or the first books of the Bible were actually written around 4,000 years ago. And the entire Bible was written over a period of, I think, about 1,700 years as a collection of books. So when you say 4,000 years, that puts it right in the area and the range of, the beginning of the Bible. So who was talking about Bigfoot? What culture? Who was talking about Bigfoot 4,000 years ago?
Well, I know specifically of the Native Americans. The Native Americans always talk, in their oral legends are the stories how when they first arrived in the new land, North America, they described that there used to be these hairy men that used to approach their campfires. And there was, what the Native Americans say, there was actual friendship between these creatures, these hairy men that lived in the woods, until there was a time when many of the first Native Americans tried to kill a large population of these creatures, and then they retreated into the woods. And since those days, roughly this will be 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 years ago when the first Native Americans arrived, there was a period of maybe 1,000 years where they were friendly with these creatures, these Bigfoots. And then after that period, when there was the wars between them and the Bigfoot never would approach humans, and they still to this day refuse to approach humans after this whole thing went down. And that's in all Native Americans' legends, that this actually did take place when they first arrived in North America.
Wow.
So what's the connection maybe between, because the Native Americans also have stories of giants, and there are tales where they like captured these the last remaining giants, and they had them I guess they cornered them in a cave and burned them out or something like that.
That's more into the giants. So that's more like into Jim Vieira's specialty of actual human looking giants. This Bigfoot's a little different than Jim Vieira's specter of the whole giant stories, like where Abraham Lincoln said that the
talking about the mounds in Ohio.
Yeah, that Abraham Lincoln said that the giants that are scattered in the mounds all over North America once looked upon Niagara Falls and awed and wonder at it, similar to how we do now. So that's the mound giants, right? That's a completely different subject of the red-haired giants that got burned out of that cave in, I think it was New Mexico.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah, I was just wondering if, because you were talking about Native American stories about, Bigfoot, and I just didn't know if there was you were talking about some kind of war. Tell me, what kind of war? I've never even heard about like a,
Well,
like a
eventually
conflict
the Native
between
Americans
a race.
were.
Are you talking about like a real conflict between a race of Bigfoots and like Indian tribes?
Well, it was just scattered like confrontations where eventually the Native Americans, according to their legends, were very skittish of these things, and a lot of people became terrified of these things because they were so overly friendly. And after the random scattered fights that the Indians had, where they claimed to have killed a great many of these Bigfoots, their population was severely reduced, and they never approached Native Americans again. And they've, till this day, been extremely skittish of any type of humans. Now, who knows what these things are? They could be related to Gigantopithecus, which was an upright walking ape that scattered all over Asia. And maybe a relative of that made its way into North America. And that's possibly why there's these stories that are all over the world. Even in Australia, there are stories of upright walking hairy men. The Aboriginals have stories of these upright walking hairy men, and it's called Yowie in Australia. In the Tibetan mountains, it's called the Yeti. In North America, it's called Sasquatch. And that's a Native American term. Bigfoot is more of a modern term that we've come up with in only the past, since around the 50s, we came up with Bigfoot as a way to describe these creatures.
Yeah, so I mean, it was Sasquatch, and it was oh crap, what's the other one? What's the one up in the Yeti?
The Yeti.
Right. What other names do we have for Bigfoot culturally?
Well, the biggest one nowadays would be Bigfoot. In North American the natives in North America refer to them as Sasquatch, but that's kind of like an anglicized version of a Salish word, which they're basically a tribe of Native Americans in the Pacific Northwest. And it was analyzed and then anglicized from something called Saskaets, which is their term for hairy man or wild man of the woods.
I'm going to have to stop reading the chat because this is quite literally the funniest chat I have ever seen so far in all of the shows we've ever done.
It is quite amusing. I agree.
I mean, there's some really hilarious comments going on in the chat right now, and I'm glad you guys are having fun. That's what really, I had no intention of taking this overly seriously, but we're gonna give Gandalf a fair chance. He said he could do many hours worth of Bigfoot, and this is something that he kind of takes seriously. So we're gonna talk about it, and the fun is welcome, man. I just have a hard time staying focused reading this chat because it's too damn funny. Really,
I'm gonna have to come back and read this chat, like rewatch this entire hangout.
There really is some hilarious shit going on in the chat, and nobody's being rude, but it's just funny as hell.
I totally understand how crazy of a subject this is. Like, it's totally out there, and for most people to hear this, that people believe in Bigfoot, it's like, it's like listening to someone go on about leprechauns to a certain extent.
So, okay. Gandalf, are you familiar? I'm sure, I guess, I'll assume that you are, but you answer. There was a guy, I forget what decade, maybe 50s, 60s. The guy ran around with this frozen Bigfoot in a big block of ice. Familiar with that story?
That's one of the hoaxers from back then.
I was just going to say that one was a hoax.
Yeah, thank you, because I didn't want to say it first.
Oh, there were lots of people that were pulling these kind of things, especially in the late 60s is when there was a lot of hoaxers. Then especially it really kicked into gear when a lot of people claimed to have killed Bigfoot, having them in their freezers. And most of these things ended up being stuffed mannequins that were covered in like hair. People would felt the mannequin, and it was just a lot of hoaxing, especially around the time when what's the name of that movie? It's a god awful movie. The Legend of Boggy Creek came out back in the 70s.
I missed that one.
I had recently heard, and I wasn't even looking into this, but somebody mentioned it in some other lecture in relation to, I think I was looking at somebody talking about psychology and how people, create, how your memories get fucked up and how people can create false memories and things like that. And the Bigfoot thing came up, and the guy mentioned that it was a hoax. The guy with the block had one in a block of ice, and he toured around the country and showed it off at bears and things like that. And the dude he mentioned he gave some detail. He said it was one of those gorilla suits that was stuffed full of animal parts.
Well, I've put up some crazy videos on Bigfoot myself, like on my alternate channel, the whole channel that was supposed to be devoted to kind of like cryptid stuff. I never really went anywhere with it, but I put up one video which is actually a recorded Bigfoot sexual assault case that took place in a national park somewhere in Colorado.
Is that the one I told you about?
Oh no, this is I think I might have told you this. Because
there's like a couple of shows ago, I told you about a Bigfoot story. There's a woman suing the Parks and Recreation over a Bigfoot sighting that they wouldn't take seriously or something.
Oh yeah. Like,
did you look into that?
No. There's tons of these stories going on all the time. Like, it's hard to keep track and stay on top of every single Bigfoot story because there's just so many of it.
Yeah, but this isn't just a story. This is supposed to be like a lawsuit going on. It's not going to prove Bigfoot, but she's supposedly suing, I think it's California Parks and Recreation, over, a sighting or an encounter or an injury that she acquired or something like that.
No, I don't remember that really. Like recently, Todd Standing, who actually who's a Bigfoot researcher, but a lot of people believe that he's some type of hoaxer. He actually is suing the British Columbia government for denying the existence of Bigfoot. And a lot of people think that this is just a publicity stunt to keep his name in the news because, for the most part, like the Bigfoot community is huge. Like, there's a lot of people that believe in this, and it's all intertwined with its own dramas, and people have their own the Bigfoot shills. There's people who believe that there's certain Bigfoot researchers that would be classified as a shill. People that would be disseminating bullshit information, like just to keep their name out there. But then there's a lot of people that are really objective about this and really look at it, and can take a step back from how ridiculous the whole thing is. Because you can't be looking into this information at all unless you're slightly able to look at it with a comical lens. You know what I mean? But some of the people that are interested in Bigfoot, a lot of people don't trust them, especially someone like Todd Standing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, if you guys are familiar, has anyone here ever heard of someone called Les Stroud?
Yeah.
Sounds familiar, yes.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with Les Stroud.
Well,
Survivor Man.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know Survivor Man, he's basically like a Canadian survival expert.
Yeah.
And he's actually lives not too far from me, actually maybe about a 10-minute drive from where Alan Watt lives.
Wait. You live that close to both Alan Watt and Les Stroud?
Oh, I would say that Alan Watt and Les Stroud both live basically 10 minutes away from. They're both around the Huntsville area, which is in the Muskoka region of Ontario.
And you haven't reached out to these guys or gone to meet them or interview them or talk to them?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of weird, you know what I mean? Like,
no, it's not weird.
Well, there's also another guy who lives probably about 5 minutes away from both of them, and his name is Paul Hellyer. He's the former Canadian.
Paul Hellyer lives up there too?
Oh, everyone in Ontario lives. Like, anyone you've heard of has a place up there.
They all live within 5 or 10 minutes or miles of each other?
Oh yeah, right in the same vicinity, right around the Huntsville region.
Isn't that weird by itself?
I guess slightly, yeah, it could be conceived as weird, but when it comes to Ontario, everyone wants to live in Muskoka. You know what I mean? Once you're relatively successful, you're going to be looking for a house up in Muskoka.
Okay.
Well, I hope I find myself in that position.
So, can I assume Jordan Peterson lives right down the block as well?
He's down in the GTA with Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern. They're all GTA people. They don't leave Toronto for the most part. Those guys.
And how come everybody famous on YouTube is Canadian?
It's part of the Canadian conspiracy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
More so, I'd say the OPP conspiracy, the Ontario Provincial Police have these alt-right sleeper agents like Stefan Molyneux, Jordan Peterson, and all these the alt-right clowns. You know what I mean?
Blame it on Canada.
Blame Canada.
Yes.
Yeah, no kidding. So Gandalf, you've posted several videos like walking around the woods. I guess your house or your property backs up against what, a big national forest?
Oh yeah, not far from me actually is about a 10-minute drive is the largest old growth forest left in southern Ontario. And in this place, you can find oak and maple and white pine trees that have tree trunks in the 10, 11 feet diameter range, and that's really rare for deciduous trees to get that big. And we're talking like oak and maple trees, not like East Coast or West Coast redwoods, like giant oak and maple trees. And it's the largest stand of old growth forest in all of southern Ontario.
Well, now that I think about it, I'm actually starting to get on board with this Canada conspiracy. Because like everybody who's either famous or anybody who's or cool. Because I mean, honestly, you're from Canada. Ian was from Canada. Our favorite YouTuber, Mark, Global Agenda's from Canada. Freddie's in our chat right now. He's Canadian. They're in there talking about Canada, who's in Montreal. Holy shit. Is anybody from America around here?
Yeah, I found it really strange when I found out how many people
It's almost disproportionate amount of Canadians that are like, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know what the whole region is. Maybe it's because we're forced to live inside for such a large period of the year.
That my cabin fever.
That would explain a lot.
Oh well, Woolies, Pie Man Woolies from Roof's neck of the woods, actually.
Justin Woolley is from Atlanta, dude. He's from Marietta, Georgia.
Oh, we got Lady Zaga in Toronto right now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Justin Woolley was in Marietta, Georgia, a suburb of part of Metro Atlanta.
I'm a Earthian.
You're Earthian?
Yeah, I'm not American. I'm not Canadian. I'm Earthian.
That's a good way of looking at it.
You know, from Futurama, they say Earthicans.
Well, I guess. I guess we could use that term.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about Jeff C. and Lee Stewie are right in the same area as Canada.
Right. Yeah. I don't even know who Lee Stewie is, but we all know who Jeff C. is.
Yep.
So maybe we're all in communications with each other, you guys. I'm just putting this out there that all the people in southern Quebec and southern Ontario, maybe we're running some kind of massive truther LARP.
I'm sure of it.
Well, certainly a hell of a lot of Sasquatch stories come out of Canada. I mean, you guys got more wilderness than anybody in the world.
Well, actually, in Ontario, I know this is going to sound hard to believe, but in all the world, the largest stand of unbroken forest is actually in northern Ontario itself. Larger than anywhere in Siberia, larger than anywhere in the Amazon. The largest contiguous forest on Earth is actually in northern Ontario.
Awesome.
Well, let's hope that lasts.
Yes.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, nobody's going up there to cut any of these trees down. It's such a remote area of the world. Like, Ontario has so much land up in the north. You could literally fit like 3 or 4 Great Britons in northern Ontario. It's just in northern Ontario.
Just in northern, not even all of Ontario.
Yeah, not even the southern little bit of Ontario that's surrounded by the states on all sides.
So the videos, like the video you put up, what, two days ago, you were 3 days ago, 4 days ago, you were showing this somebody put up a no trespassing sign. There was a dead rooster on the path. What's with that?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. Like, I've gone back into this forest hundreds and thousands of times, and I have never seen anything like that before. It was completely whacked out.
So you were in a section of forest that you were sure was nobody's personal property.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've gone back there. I've never seen anything like this. So I'm walking down this random trail, and I see a tree cut down, and then I walk a few more feet, and I see someone had slaughtered a rooster and had left it there on the trail.
Freaky.
Did you examine that rooster any closer after, because from the video, it just looks like you had a look at it and walked on past it. Did you actually examine that rooster to see if it was, an animal or, it was headless, right? Was it headless?
Dude, I didn't even get too close to it. I did not want to breathe the damn thing because I didn't know how long it was around there. But honestly, it looked like it was slaughtered in the past 2 days from the point I had walked up on it. And that's why I took a completely different route back to get to my house.
Okay, so, all right, now I've got a good question for you. Because I know you have trail cams, right? You got trail cams.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you're walking out in this area, back behind your house, in a part of what would be a national forest area where nobody owns property. You're on a path, and you wander up on an area that you've probably been to before. That you see a no trespassing sign, and you see a tree that was cut to block the path from like bikes or ATVs, and a dead rooster. Did it even occur to you to set up one of your trail cams to watch that area?
That's a good question. I was actually thinking about doing that, but it's kind of like out of the way. It's kind of a far off place.
Don't give me excuses. You got a good. This is a good, subject. I mean, if you want to look at a piece of forest, this is a piece. You might find out who the hell is posting signs and cutting off chickens' heads and cutting down trees, claiming the area. Maybe Bigfoot put that sign up.
Well, Bigfoot would have to know where to buy I also found a no trespassing sign there, not far from it. So I don't think it was some kind of paranormal thing. I just think there was some kind of wacko living in the woods that put this up.
You think somebody living in the woods did that?
It could be, yeah. Like there's a lot of weird stuff, like especially up in the north, but when it comes to that. But down here, there could be some guy living up on the side of the hill somewhere in the woods. I wouldn't put it past somebody.
Down here in America, we are fascinated with these reality TV shows. We got Alaskan Bush People and all kinds of survival shows. Les Stroud it was really popular for a while, and then there was Bear Grylls, and then we've got Survivor, the TV show, and all these different kind of survival. And then we have Alone and Naked and Afraid. We've got all kind of crazy ass survival wilderness TV reality shows. So shit, I just lost my train of thought. I wanted to ask you something interesting. Crap.
We were just talking about, like, I was saying, like, there could be some weird guy.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we've got this reality show where up in the northeast in the wilderness in the redwood forest of Washington State. There's a TV show where they follow this old guy around, and he literally lives in the forest. And I wish I could remember the name of that show right now, but sorry, it eludes me. But they literally follow around this one single old man who literally lives like a wild man in the forest, in the redwood forest up in near Canada, up in Washington and the Pacific Northwest.
Well, yeah, there could be some old weird hermits like living in the woods. You know what I mean?
You ever run into anybody like that? I'm not talking about like the super crazy near. I'm not talking about that, but I mean, have you ever had any firsthand experience with like individuals that just want to be left alone and want to live out in the woods, like whatever wild tribe people do?
Oh, for sure. Well, not personally, no, like me running into somebody living in the woods, like, but I have found ruins of people who have lived in the woods. You know, kind of like hermits that live in the woods. I found ruins of their houses like around this area. So people do it from time to time where they just want to get away from everything, and you'll find this stuff in the middle of the woods somewhere. Like I found kind of like a picture.
Mick Dodge. His name is Mick Dodge. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Mike B in the chat just reminded me. Mick Dodge. That's correct. Thank you very much. That's the name of the guy who lives in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I think I saw that TV show, but personally, no, I haven't run into anyone. But I've talked to people who have run into the different hermits that especially live up in the north part of the province, and people that are doing this, that are trying to live far away from civilization. A lot of them will come into town for maybe like a day or two. They'll get dry goods that they need. A lot of Native Americans actually do this, not just crazy old white dudes. A lot of Native Americans actually come into towns and then they get their dry goods. So they'll get like dried milk, they'll get flour and sugar, salt, and they'll go back off into the woods and they'll just go to their cabins that are on some lake in the middle of nowhere. Like, you got to imagine, if you try looking at Northern Ontario on Google Earth, and you'll see what I mean if you really analyze the place. Like, zoom in maybe a decent amount so you can see the lakes. But there's over 250,000 lakes in Ontario. We're not talking about small lakes. We're talking about we're talking big lakes, like what down south you would consider a big lake. But there's over 250,000 of these places of these lakes up north. And yeah, it's a big hermit province. Like, there's lots of weird stuff that goes on. But what were you gonna say, bro?
No, actually, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I was giggling. Broadswords cracking jokes.
Yeah, he is.
He said hermits have crabs, and it just gave me the chuckle for a second. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, but like, so this kind of stuff does go on, you know what I mean? And it's I know it's like, it's crazy, like, hearing about this kind of stuff, that there are actual hermit colonies that live out in the middle of nowhere, right?
I wouldn't doubt it at all. No doubt at all that there are people who literally have just abandoned everything to go live on their own. In fact, there was a movie about this young kid who went up to Alaska to do that, or went, maybe it was somewhere up in North Canada. Actually it was Alaska.
Yeah, it was Alaska.
And then he accidentally ate some plant that was poison, and he was living in an abandoned bus out in the middle of nowhere, and he wasn't able to procure enough food for winter, and he ate some bad plants, and he fucking died.
Yep. He ate the
that movie came out in the mid-2000s, I think.
Yeah.
But no, picture that times like 1,000. Like, I've talked to national park workers that have told me about these people that they'll run into in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere.
Sounds glorious. Where do I sign up?
Sandra, I've noticed you, sweetheart. It's really tough to read and type in the chat and have a conversation. It's very, very distracting. I can only pipe in the chat every now and then. So yes, Sandra, I've noticed you, honey. Thank you. So Gandalf, this video where you find like the no trespassing sign, how far? You said it was way back. How far from like where you're based, whatever your house or where you live? How far into the woods is it?
I'd say about an hour.
An hour walk?
Yeah.
Well, that's not too bad. I mean, you were obviously there for no reason, and now you've got a reason to go set up trail cams.
But that's the reason I have not gone back there and set up a trail cam, because it is in the middle of it's almost in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but you're armed, right?
Well, as armed as a Canadian with no gun license can be.
So do you have to have a license to have like a hunting rifle or a shotgun?
Yeah, so I don't have the license currently. Like I used to have one back when I was in high school, but I don't have my license up to date right now.
So in Canada, handguns are illegal? Totally?
They're restricted, so you need a special permit in order to carry a handgun. But long rifles aren't restricted. It's kind of easy. It's only a couple $100 to go and get your hunting course done and your firearms ownership.
Okay.
But anyone can own guns. It's not like it's like something that Canadians can't have, but we're not allowed to have like M16.
So you still have to have like a government like license to have a regular shotgun or hunting rifle?
Yeah, so
even that, you got to have a license for that just to own one?
Yeah, to have a shotgun, a rifle, you need a license.
Wow. Okay, that sucks.
I gotta read this. Sandra says, if Gandalf has not shot Bigfoot, I'm going to leave this stream a bit frustrated.
If Gandalf has not shot a Bigfoot, I'm going to leave the stream a bit frustrated.
Yep.
All right, Gandalf, you could lie to us and at least tell us you took a shot at one.
Well, I don't think I would shoot at one even if I had the thing in my crosshairs, honestly.
So what do you think of the Les Stroud footage? Because like I said, Les Stroud here in America, his TV show was really popular. He did very well. He even he was even interviewed on Coast to Coast. I think George Norrie interviewed him once or twice. I think Jimmy Church might have interviewed him. So Les Stroud has made quite an impact here down in the States. But at the end of his fame when his TV show was pretty much fading out, they started milking it with Bigfoot stuff.
Well, the whole reason that Les Stroud started doing that with the Bigfoot is because he actually had two things that happened to him during his time filming Survivor Man, where Les Stroud believes that he had close encounters with Bigfoot, most notably in Alaska.
So what do you think of have you seen the footage that Les Stroud put out? He went up and he was doing some actual shows, like at the end of his series, right before he was off the air. They were, I'm guessing they were milking it, trying to get more attention because he was, losing the crowd. But he did a couple of shows where him and this other guy went up out in the wilderness a couple of times looking for Bigfoot, and there was some footage. And his buddy, and it wasn't Les's footage, but Les featured the footage of somebody else who literally zoomed right in, and you could see a full face, and it blinked, and you could see his eyes, and it literally blinked at you on camera through the trees, and it was that kind of clear footage. Have you seen that shit, and what do you think of that?
That's Todd Standing, and that guy's believed to be a hoaxer. And, he's the guy who's suing the British Columbian government for not confirming or denying that a Bigfoot exists. And a lot of people don't trust Todd Standing. He's kind of like a bit of a joke, and he's kind of not trusted. This is a guy who will take people out into the woods, but you got to pay him like $1,000 a head to go out into the woods with him. And yeah, he's not a trustworthy person. I think that was, who knows what that was. It was probably some type of, I don't know, either CGI, who knows what it was, but I do not believe that that guy's legitimate at all.
Okay, so you and I have already covered this, and it seemed when we did cover it that you were not aware. And what I mean is the upside down trees.
Oh yeah, that's a very common Bigfoot motif. You'll see that all over the place. A tree that's been ripped up by the roots, and the tree's flipped over and stuck its head in the ground, and it's basically a big crown of roots that looks like a big mushroom, basically. But it's one of the most common Bigfoot motifs all over North America.
Okay.
It's most commonly seen actually on Vancouver Island.
Okay, now you say Bigfoot motif, and I understand that, and I'm glad that you at least use that terminology. I mentioned to you that that is a common thing that loggers would do to literally mark their territory. Because, back in the old days, it was, horse and buggy and wagon carts and donkeys that would drag these logs. They would walk in and they would cut down trees, and horse and buggy and donkeys would drag logs out. That's how the loggers did it in the old days. So they didn't have roads. They had pathways and shit like that. So they were really out in the wilderness logging. And they would kind of mark their territory. It's a common thing that loggers are known to have done.
Well, that's possible. Like, I'm not going to say conclusively that that's a sign of a Bigfoot. There's lots of different signs for Bigfoot, though. There's the teepee structures that will be seen in the forest. So that'll be like a set of trees in the middle of a forest that are all broken down, all hitting the same direction, and basically form their own little teepee. Then there's the trees ripped out by the roots and with the tree flipped upside down. Those are the two most common tell signs that people look for when they're looking for a Bigfoot.
So, okay. So are you actually telling me that you're on board with the idea that Bigfoot is doing these things by pushing over trees in teepee forms and turning trees upside down? Are you on board with that idea that this is a Bigfoot actual causation?
No, I'm really skeptical about that, actually. Like if you watch the Todd Standing and Les Stroud videos that they did together, Todd Standing tries to convince Les Stroud that this is signs of Bigfoot, but I'm not sure. I'm actually quite skeptical on if that is a tell sign of Bigfoot.
Okay, good. At least you're in. Okay, good. Because honestly, my next question would have been, what the hell would be Bigfoot's motivation to rip a tree out of the ground by its roots and flip it upside down? What possible motivation would Bigfoot have to do that?
Good question.
Well, possibly their rationalization would be that it's basically to ward off other Bigfoots, or it's as some type of warning to humans.
Okay. And I guess the same question would apply, and you don't have to answer again. It's rhetorical. But, the teepee formations, it's like, why, what motivation would there be to...
Same story when it comes to the teepee formations, that it's simply Bigfoot trying to ward off other Bigfoots or humans from entering its territory.
Okay, so but you still, you live in a forested area, and I know that you've seen trees fall, and you've heard them fall, and you've had ice storms where trees fall over. And I know for sure if you live in a wooded area, you've seen trees get hung up on each other when they fall. They don't fall all the way down. They get snagged on a big branch, and then you got a dead man or what's called a widowmaker.
Well, the thing is, when it comes to these trees falling in a teepee formation, is a lot of times the trees are actually upside down. So it'll be a bunch of trees upside down with the roots up above you, like 10, 15 feet in the air. And the head of the tree or the crown of the tree would be dug into the ground. That's why a lot of people are really skeptical or really curious about these tree formations that they find in the woods.
Well, I think the people in the chat right now are suspicious that Bigfoot might be a Freemason.
Well, he's probably working for the Illuminati.
You know the motif at all of these, shootings and events and car drive into a crowd where there's, the one shoe, right? The Masonic one shoe.
Yep.
So we're talking about Bigfoot and the one shoe. So Bigfoot he's a Freemason because all right, you get it. That's enough. It's a terrible joke. So let me see. What do you think? Just curious, what do you think about the guy who was killed pretending to be Bigfoot and jumping out in front of cars? Have you heard that? You heard that story?
No, I've actually never heard that. When did this take place?
Oh,
that's
shit.
new on me too.
Oh, now I got to look it up. I heard about it. I don't have details. I just heard about this story. I don't know where. I don't remember when. It was a couple of years ago. But there was some guy out in the middle of nowhere pretending to be Bigfoot. He was dressed up in a big gorilla suit or some shit. And he was literally jumping out in front of cars, freaking people out on the road. And I guess somebody didn't swerve fast enough and they hit him and he fucking died. It was a whole news story.
Let this be a lesson to you all.
Yeah, kids, don't try this at home.
Yeah, anybody going out in a Bigfoot costume is liable to get shot. Not so much up here in Canada, but yeah, not a good call.
I'm actually going to look that up. Why don't you banter on and tell me something I don't know while I try to look this up?
Well, I was going to ask this question to start us off to both you and Amy. When it comes to Bigfoot, what's your when I say Bigfoot, what first comes to mind? Now, you seem to actually, both of you, be a little more knowledgeable than the average person. But what's the most famous thing that comes to mind when I say Bigfoot?
Well, for me, I just think of a big, hairy, kind of man-like creature, and I don't have any stories or legends or anything like that. So I just think of what it looks like.
I would have to concur. If you want to ask me what the first thing I think of, obviously it's going to be the image, all the images that we've been pelted with through the media. So I would say the second immediately thing that comes to my head is that old footage from the 70s that actually has been pretty thoroughly debunked, where the Bigfoot walks across the stream bed.
Why do you think that was debunked?
Because I think somebody, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've seen it. The flexing of the skin, the motion as it walks, there's a wrinkling of the skin that is more conducive of somebody wearing a suit. And if I remember, that was like the primary thing that set somebody off claiming it to be a hoax. And I'm not sure, but I vaguely, and forgive me if I'm wrong, and I do mean this, forgive me if I'm wrong, I think I vaguely remember the guy actually later admitting that it was a hoax, but I could be wrong. I might be thinking of something else. But I did find, if you want to comment, go ahead and I'll shut up. But I did find the articles where there was a man hit by a car. He was hit twice in an apparent Bigfoot hoax. That was 2012. So,
well,
go ahead. Go ahead. I can share these articles, or you can take over, whatever.
Well, I was just going to say that when it comes to the Patterson-Gimlin footage.
The Patterson, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's never been conclusively explained by anyone. Different people have tried to explain that away as some type of man in a suit, but a lot of different people, especially animal experts, have examined this and said that there's no way in hell this is a suit.
Okay, well, I'm not in any position to argue. All I know is what I think I remember, and I'm sorry, that's not much to go on, but that's the best I have for you.
Well, keep in mind, so basically the Patterson-Gimlin footage was filmed in Humboldt County, California, and it's at a place called Bluff Creek. And these two guys went out into the woods, and they came across what they thought was some type of signs that there was something in the area. And they were riding on horseback. They came to a bend in the creek, and they saw the famous Patterson-Gimlin footage. And nobody has ever been able to properly explain what this was. A lot of people have claimed over the years to have actually been the person that was in this Bigfoot costume. And there's been over 10 or 20 people who have come forward over the years claiming to have been the person in the Bigfoot costume. And all of them have been completely debunked over the years. Many of them were nowhere near the area of this part of California when this took place. So it's just a lot of people that came forward looking to take credit for this.
All right. So I'm looking at this article. I guess this is a Kalispell, Montana. A man dressed in a military-style ghillie suit. That's a sniper suit. That's with all the stringy, green and brown strings so that he can hide in the bushes. A military-style ghillie suit, and apparently trying to provoke reports of a Bigfoot sighting in northwest Montana, was struck by 2 cars and killed, authorities said. Don't you love the authorities?
Yes.
The man was standing in the right-hand lane of the U.S. Highway 93. Oh, there's 93. South of Kalispell. Kalispell. Ooh.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's Kalispell.
I just noticed it's Kalispell. Yeah, I did notice. And good on you, Amy. You picked it up too. So a man was standing in the right-hand lane of U.S. Highway 93 of Kalispell on Sunday night when he was hit by the first car, according to Montana Highway Patrol. A second car hit the man as he lay on the roadway, authorities said. Flathead County officials, identified the man as Randy Lee Tenley, 44. Oh, my God, with the numbers. Kalispell Trooper Jim Schneider said motives were ascertained during interviews with friends, and alcohol may have been a factor, but investigators were awaiting tests. What, they didn't smell Bigfoot's breath? He was trying to make people think he was Sasquatch so people would call in a Sasquatch sighting, Schneider told Daily Interlake on Monday. You can't make it up. I haven't seen or heard of anything like this before. Obviously, his suit made it difficult for people to see him.
Well, that's probably happened more than once, and that happened quite recently. So, I wouldn't recommend anyone trying to go out and hoax people to ever do anything that's stupid. There's so many people that want to, get credit for doing something crazy and like getting their own YouTube video put up of them. But that's the whole problem with this whole Bigfoot field of research, is that there are so many hoaxes and it's so hard to discern the bullshit from the truth,
What was that guy's name again, Aaron? The guy that got hit?
Hang on a second. Randy Lee Tenley.
Randy Leetenley.
I've got it all blown up in the center of the screen for you. Randy Lee Tenley. Tenley.
Yep, I got it correctly. I just wanted to, with all them numbers, I wanted to run the gematria. Oh my God, it's 66 full reduction. And let's see, what other interesting numbers pop up?
Try running Kali spell.
All right.
It's Kali. You know, the goddess of destruction.
I know.
Goddess of destruction, Kali, and it's a spell. So,
okay.
This whole story could be a complete hoax. Who the hell knows?
It's 193 in Frank Baconis, which is the 44th prime. It's 97 in Ordinal.
And he's 44 years old.
Yep. Let's see if there's anything else that looks interesting. Well, we've got our 91 in Jewish Ordinal. And,
how about Bigfoot? Just run Bigfoot. It's a Bigfoot. Right. It's a Bigfoot story.
Well, while you guys are doing that, I want to relay a story to you, okay?
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
So, this is known as the Bauman story. So, Bauman was basically a trapper, and he had a trapper buddy, and both of these guys went off into the woods. And they were just trapping, and they both had their camp set up. And one night, they came out of their tents hearing a bunch of noise in the woods, and they claimed to have seen something walking in the woods, a hairy man covered from head to toe in fur, and this thing seemed to have been menacing them. When they went back out into the woods to check their trap lines, they would come back the next day, or that night, and they would see that their camp was ransacked and torn to pieces. This happened a couple times, a couple nights, where eventually they had decided to get the hell out of there. And Bauman went out to check the trap lines, the last of the trap lines that they had set up. And when he was coming back to the camp, he found that the camp again was it wasn't packed up. The camp was packed up, but the place wasn't ripped apart. His buddy had taken all the stuff in their camp and put it all away to get the hell out of there. And this was kind of strange to Bauman because he was wondering what the hell was going on. Why would his buddy just vanish and be packing up all their stuff without telling him, right? So he walked a bit further, looking around the place, and he found his buddy had his head snapped backwards and was just lying there on the ground. And this guy was like, what the hell? And he got the hell out of the forest. And the thing that he found, though, which was disturbing, was upright walking prints that were basically circling their camping place, where they had all their trap lines set up. Now, this story was relayed from somebody in a book. And this book was, the story took place according to the guy who relayed this story. This apparently took place in 1892. Eventually, this was put into print, this story, in 1923 in a book called The Wilderness Hunter. And this book, this book has been analyzed and looked at because there's a lot of different hunting stories and truthful tales of things that went down in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And the author of this book his name was Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh. Oh, you saved that to the end, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I had to.
That name sounds vaguely familiar. Why does it sound so vaguely familiar?
Amy, you might want to go into your microphone settings and back off the input volume. When you unmute, there's like a shitload of like staticky, white noise, background noise. That's a little unusual for you. You don't usually have that, so maybe I
don't know what's going on.
Maybe your input volume, like I have, problem. Too much input volume.
Well, keep in mind that this story was relayed in the 1920s, and what the author of the book, Teddy Roosevelt, referred to these things as goblins. This is before there was any word in the modern lexicon called Bigfoot or Sasquatch. So this thing was referred to as the Goblin, not as a Bigfoot or anything like that. But this lines up pretty well exactly with stories of Bigfoot, of a hairy man walking upright, covered in hair. And the weird part about it is how the Bigfoot apparently killed somebody by snapping his head back.
Okay, so that's interesting. So Bigfoot's a murderer. It's not pretty typical for Bigfoot stories to have physical encounters where there are injuries.
No, it's actually really rare. Around 10% of Bigfoot stories end in something like this happening.
Really, 10%? That's actually kind of higher than I would expect from what I've heard, and I occasionally pay attention to the woo-woo.
Well, when I say physical, I mean not like Bigfoot's like coming up and murdering people, but 10% of Bigfoot encounters are slightly aggressive, where a Bigfoot will be said to have been throwing rocks or banging trees against other trees to create kind of sounds to scare people off. But the most common thing for Bigfoot to do will be to be throwing rocks when it comes to aggressive Sasquatch encounters.
Okay, do you have you thought about, like, maybe again what would motivate Bigfoot to throw rocks? Why would Bigfoot not just scurry off and be quietly unnoticed?
Well, it's like people. It's like people. How many people do you know, like on your average day, walking around, act aggressive towards you?
Almost never.
So it's similar to this. So you will, like people, run into aggressive Sasquatch from time to time, but it's not common. So most of the time, if Bigfoot were to initiate this, it would be just it would be a strange phenomenon, because most of the time, if a Bigfoot were to run into somebody, it's because the Bigfoot wants to. If you're walking out in the woods and you're just going through the woods, you will be heard by almost every single animal known to exist.
Sure.
And a Bigfoot would simply avoid you for the most part. It might watch you from the top of a hill as you walked by. It's really rare for one to engage with somebody. And the only time this ever happens is if the person, or sorry, the Bigfoot actually engages with the person themselves. It's never you running across a Bigfoot, because they would hear you coming at a mile's distance.
Oh yeah. That much I know. I've done enough, spent enough time outside hunting and camping in the wilderness, and you can hear when you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's no damn noise, you can hear shit that is so far away. The slightest whisper when two people are talking or walking and stepping on sticks and crackling sticks as they walk. The noise is unbelievable. My old man used to take me out when I was a kid to go deer hunting, and he was always getting on to me about how I walked and not stepping on sticks and breaking and making any noises and crunching. And even he told me, walking through a little 2 inches of snow, he said, be careful not to let the snow crunch under your feet. Just taught me how to be super, super quiet. And I'm an animal owner. I've got dogs and cats, and so I know the kind of things that they notice when it comes to like microscopic little sounds that make them pay attention and shit like that. So I'm fully aware that they would hear you long before you would ever notice that they were there. I guess I'm just what's your opinion on the idea that a lot of these stories where people say that rocks are being thrown at them? What do you think, in your estimation, like, what's the percentage of those stories, in your opinion, are actually some other asshole in the woods fucking with somebody else?
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
Maybe 2%.
Oh, that small? Really?
Yeah, there's a special reason for that, though. Most of these encounters that happen with people who claim to have stones being thrown at them, these happen in some of the most remote areas, like wilderness regions. And there's no way in hell there's going to be people running around tormenting people in the middle of nowhere. A lot of these stories, there's a lot more to it than just stones being thrown. You know, it's not just a simple case of somebody saying that they see a rock get thrown by them. You know, one famous story, like actually was actually put on TV, and this actually happened west of Thunder Bay, which is in northern Ontario. So this is off in kind of western Ontario. This is near the Manitoba border, and this story takes place where a bunch of guys went camping. Well, not camping. They went out to this cabin in the woods, and all these cabins that are up there, you need to fly in. There's no way you can drive to these areas. The only way to get to these areas is to be flown in by float plane. It's like you're in Alaska, because there's no road systems that exist over there. And a lot of these stories actually come from regions like this, where the only way in is by float plane. So that's why I find it extremely unlikely that it's people throwing rocks at other people when it comes to these stories in particular.
Interesting.
So Laz says that the Bigfoot phenomenon is worldwide, and I'm aware of that, and probably you are too.
Well, we said so at the start of the show.
I think Laz is just getting in now.
I'm just trying to segue into another question, Amy.
Oh, okay. I'll shut up then.
So you had mentioned that, you know, the Native Americans have Bigfoot stories that are as much as 4,000 years old. Is that the oldest story? Are there other cultures? Are you aware of other cultures around the world with like very, very old Bigfoot tales?
Well, there's old stories of the Tibetans claiming to have seen them up in the mountains. There's stories even actually in Africa, and stories also including places like Australia, where Aborigines claim that they've seen hairy men living in the forest up in the Blue Mountains there on the east coast of Australia. You know, these stories are all over the place, but they also take place especially in the Ural Mountains region of Russia. And, you know, who knows how many of these stories there are, but there's no reason that these encounters wouldn't be reported all over the world unless it was some type of worldwide phenomenon where these things exist all over the place.
What do you think of the Lloyd Pye documentary or lecture that he gave? There's a YouTube video where Lloyd Pye goes into this whole Australopithecus, theory of his.
Well, that's actually, when it comes to Lloyd Pye, I actually agree with him mostly on everything. I'm pretty sure that it is some type of hominid related to the Gigantopithecus. Now, keep in mind, when it comes to the Gigantopithecus, this existed, I forget exactly how recent, but it's within the 100,000 year mark. Similar to Neanderthal. Neanderthal was said to go extinct roughly 25,000 years ago. And more recently, on the island of Florence in Indonesia, it's been confirmed that within 10,000 years ago, something known as the Homo floresian was still in existence. So all of these species, from the Gigantopithecus to the Neanderthal to the Homo floresian, and the Homo floresian is basically an upright walking ape-looking man that's kind of similar to Homo habilis or Homo erectus. And this went extinct 10,000 years ago, according to story. On the island of Florence, people still claim to have encounters with this creature, but we're talking confirmed. There's no denying this. Within the time that humans have existed on Earth, roughly 300,000. I think our guest next week will have some contrary information on this, but within the confirmed time span of humans existing on Earth, roughly 300,000 years, there were 3 other upright walking hominids. And there's no debating this, that there were 3 other upright walking hominids.
Right.
Four technically, if you count Cro-Magnon man.
So you agree almost entirely with pretty much everything Lloyd Pye presents in his lecture?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, I think he did a great job. His presentation was hard to refute.
Well, there is no refuting like this information that there. Like, check it out. Look into a Homo floresian and look into the date when they apparently.
All right, hang on. Hang on. You know me. I like to take notes, and I'm ready. Spell floresian. Spell that.
Oh, dude, I suck at spelling this.
Is it FL or a PHL?
I'd say FLORISIA, something along that line.
IAN.
But yeah, look for the island of Florence.
Okay. Okay.
Which is in southern Indonesia. It's kind of like the most populated region of all of Indonesia, just north of Australia.
Isle of Florence. Okay, I'll put that down. Homo floresian. That's not one that I've heard of.
There was actually where I first discovered the Homo floresian was a National Geographic cover article that went over this into deep detail back in the mid 2000s. And
so,
yeah,
no, go ahead.
It just blew everyone away, especially the National Geographic, that there was this unknown hominid species that existed longer or more recent to us than even Neanderthal did.
Okay. So is there anything that Lloyd Pye presents that you would refute?
No, Lloyd Pye's pretty much spot on with all of his information. You know, he only brings forward information that can be confirmed. Like, when it comes to Bigfoot, I'm not going to go into the whole Star Child aspect of it, right?
Okay, yeah, I was going to kind of go there. So you're saying you're in the camp that if Bigfoot is, you know, a real thing, that it's more likely to be a remnant of a Gigantopithecus or a Homo gigant.
Well, even the whole thing is, when it comes to these upright walking hominids, remember there is no common ancestor for us to relate to earlier hominid species. So who knows how many dozens of upright walking hominids have not yet been discovered. You know, we don't know. You know, we don't even know our common ancestor that relates us back to the more primitive upright walking hominids like Lucy that was found in East Africa.
But you're a skeptical guy.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So does it not make sense that maybe we would have had something a little more substantial by now?
No. The reason that you know, you can get into really, like, this is where the whole Bigfoot subject starts to get really weird, is because a lot of people have different theories for why there would not be something more conclusive by this point. Why is this is the big elephant in the room. Why has there been no body discovered?
And,
you know?
Yeah, no skeletons, no nothing.
And every time somebody claims to have a hair sample, it's always a brown bear.
Well, one thing that you would find really interesting is David Paulides' DNA sample work that they've been trying to get over with the missing 411. It's actually kind of bizarre. A lot of the different samples that they've had brought into them indicate human DNA, and if not human DNA, 99.9% similar to human DNA is what they find. A lot of the samples are showing when they analyze them. But then again, we're about, I think, 99% or 97% identical DNA-wise to things like chimpanzees.
True.
Well, I mean, we actually, on that level, if you want to go there, we actually share DNA with bananas.
Oh, of course.
And jellyfish.
And literally everything, every living creature on this planet has some part of their DNA that is dead on with everything else. So we're all literally connected, you know, on the DNA scale somewhere.
Well, that's the whole thing. David Paulides likes to get into the information and try and relate it as closely as is possible to the stories that Native Americans have been saying all along, that the Bigfoot or the Saskatchewan, it's anglicized to Sasquatch, is an extremely close cousin to us. And it can almost be interpreted as another human many times, and that they're extremely intelligent. And when it gets to their intelligence, picture an animal, okay? So something like an owl or a deer. Now picture how well let's stick to mammals. So picture a fox. How well can a fox hear? How well can a deer smell? Now, let's transplant those two abilities, heightened scent, and let's go to owls for the hell of it, heightened hearing, heightened smell. Like, we're talking about the senses of an animal, which are extremely heightened in comparison to humans.
Yeah, better night vision, everything.
So let's transplant those animalistic features onto something almost as similar as to a human brain. How well, if you were out in the woods, how well could you hide from humans if you had heightened senses of animals? If you were trying to get away from people, never come near people, how well could you hide from human civilization, including cars and all that, if you had heightened scent, heightened hearing, and heightened smell? How well could you hide from humans? Think about it.
Pretty well. I would think that if you had better senses all around, it'd be far easier to hide than.
Well,
yeah. So
look, I've been deer hunting, and I've had deer stand as close as maybe 20 or less yards away from me. And I looked right past them because they stood absolutely still and their color blended in with the, you know, the leaf litter and the tree bark. And so all you got to do, if you're wearing a brown fur coat, all you got to do is stand still, and you're really hard to spot.
Yep.
So as long as you don't stink up a storm and you're not making any noise, you could hide from a human pretty damn easily. We're not very well adapted to pick that shit out. We sense motion. That's our big gig.
Yep.
Well, yeah, exactly. So we're dealing with some type of, when it comes to why they haven't been discovered, we're dealing with something that's highly intelligent and highly attuned to humans. Remember what the Native Americans said, that since the interactions that they had when the Native Americans first came over, they have been extremely paranoid of humans and will avoid them at all costs. So we're dealing with something that's perpetually hiding from human beings.
Well, I mean, deer kind of do that, you know, but that's because deer is a prey animal. So where are you on the scale, Gandalf? Is Sasquatch a prey animal or a predator?
I'd say it's a herbivore. It's not exactly a predator. It's more so a scavenger.
So have we as humans ever in our existence known of any? And by the way, herbivores are prey animals. Okay, they're not predators. Herbivores are not prey animals. There's no such thing as an herbivore that's a predator. Now, omnivores, dogs, for instance, wolves, you know, they'll scavenge and they'll eat all kinds of stuff, but they're predators. They will kill when they get the chance. Okay.
Yep.
So if it's an omnivore, then that means it's a predator, that it's a prey animal. So on one level, it makes sense that they're perpetually hiding like a deer or a rabbit, right? Which also means that their eyeballs should be on the side of their head. Because if it's a prey animal, that's how prey animals have evolved, to spot predators from all directions, because their eyeballs are not facing forward for depth perception.
I'll
right?
retract it. It's an omnivore.
Okay. So
but it's an opportunist carnivore when it has to be. So if this thing were to track down a rabbit, throw a rock at it, kill it, and eat it, it's not like it's hunting for meat specifically. Most of the time, I imagine these things would be eating things like roots, berries, mushrooms, and stuff similar to that. And meat is as often as humans used to eat meat back when we were in our more hunter-gatherer days.
Okay, so bears, that's not too hard to fathom, because bears, their eyeballs, they're face forward, they're predators, and yet they spend a lot of time munching on berries and scavenging what they can. So they're herbivores or omnivores. That's all right, I guess. Let me see here. So what do you think of the idea that, much like, UFO stories, that when people tell a tale, or maybe they have some sort of experience, maybe they're camping and they hear a strange noise, the idea of being primed, right? Do you understand the psychological concept of primed, right? So people
like you're expecting to see something.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean that they've already been mentally, prepared, or they've seen something that mentally or psychologically primes them for an explanation later on, right? Because I mean, like a lot of UFO abduction stories are people who have already heard the stories, and so they already know, how to tell the tale. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
The thing is, a lot of people who have encounters in the woods, remember, so if you were to have an encounter with Bigfoot, it's because Bigfoot wants you to have an encounter with it. That's why I always find it hilarious, these TV shows where these guys go out into the woods looking for Bigfoot, expecting to find something. These guys are never going to find anything.
I find it an odd explanation that you say I mean, on one level, I find it an odd explanation when you say Bigfoot wants you, when you encounter one, he wants you to encounter. So I'm thinking of rock throwing. So I'm thinking, if Bigfoot wants you to encounter a Bigfoot, why would he throw rocks at you?
Well, because he wants you to know he's there.
Oh, well, okay. I mean, if they're that smart, I don't. I guess I'm trying to apply human logic to a Bigfoot. If I was in the wilderness and I wanted someone to know I was there, I wouldn't throw rocks.
Well, 90% of times, I'd say if anyone were to be near one of these things in the woods, 90% of the time, the thing's going to look at you from behind a tree and it's going to get the hell out of there. It's not going to confront you. But it's similar to, say you're walking down the road or down the sidewalk somewhere in a city. If you were to be making eye contact with every single person that comes across you, what's the odds that one of these people are going to say, hey, what the hell are you looking at me for, and try and get confrontation with you? It's rare for these things to interact with people, extremely rare. I'd say even 95% of the time they would stay within a mile's distance of you at all times.
Okay.
I'm still trying to figure out the rock throwing, because to be honest, if I was out in the wilderness and somebody was fucking throwing, I say somebody, if I'm out in the wilderness and rocks are flying at me, I would probably want to take my fucking pistol and go and investigate who the fuck is throwing rocks at me. You know what I mean? or what the hell is going on. I mean, the chances that somebody, not just me, there's a lot of people who may be more bold than I am, who would definitely want to know where the hell are these rocks coming from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than just be afraid and pack up and leave camp, a lot of people would say, who the fuck is throwing rocks at me in the middle of nowhere?
Well, a lot of people do record themselves having confrontations, screaming out into the woods, get the hell out of here, who are you? And remember, these are one-offs, so this is like maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 100, like where they are actually interacting with a person to this extent, where they're going to be throwing rocks. That's extremely rare. Like, it's very rare that they ever interact with people, either vocally or by doing something like throwing rocks.
Well, I'm thinking, you know, like in like a wartime situation, or even like an active shooter scenario where somebody, like you got a sniper and he's shooting people. It only takes 1 or 2 shots for somebody on the ground to figure out where the shots are coming from. And even if you don't see the muzzle flash and you don't see the shooter, you can actually, you know, through very easy logic and very easy geometry, you can pretty much figure out the trajectory of where the bullet came from through the damage that it does and the ricochets that it causes, and you know what I mean, the pathway that the bullet, and in this case a rock. So if I'm out in the wilderness and somebody throws a rock, even if it's nighttime, okay,
yeah, you get a good idea of the direction.
You can hear where the rock hits the ground, and then you can hear where the rock bounces and rolls through the leaves, and that gives you an absolute direction where the rock came from. It only takes one time. If you're even paying attention, you hear the thud when the rock hits the ground, and then the rock rolls and bounces through the leaf litter, and you can literally get a perfect trajectory of where that rock came from a single rock throw. Anybody with a brain, that is. Do you know what I mean? That's really not that hard. And then it wouldn't surprise me one bit that there would be a lot of people within these encounters that would, you know, take their pistol or their rifle and go find out who the fuck is throwing rocks. I just have a hard time with this whole idea of, and by the way, a lot of times when the rocks are thrown, these stories, it's like there's just a campground in the middle of nowhere. They're not doing anything. They're not being noisy. They're not being disruptive. They're just camping. And a lot of times they've already retired to their tent and they're very quiet. Maybe the campfire has gone out. And then for no reason, literally for no reason, rocks start flying.
Well, yeah, these things, you know, they're unpredictable for the most part. They're extremely timid, but they can be unpredictable at times where they will want to interact with somebody. And, you know, if you're going to be going out into the woods and you start having one of these more rare encounters, like where one of them is trying to interact with you, if you start shooting off your gun, this thing's going to take off, but this thing's going to still be watching you. They're going to stay relatively close to you. They're highly intelligent creatures, highly, highly intelligent. And now I'm going to remind you, I still, to a certain extent, am extremely skeptical about them existing. But I tend to believe that it's quite possible. It's quite possible that these things really do exist.
Well,
you know?
I wouldn't even give it time tonight if I didn't at least consider the possibility. Okay, I mean, as skeptical as I am, I can't rule it out. I just, without, you know, it's hard to prove a negative, and it's like for me, and I'm almost in the same camp with UFOs lately, particularly abductions. As far as I'm concerned, the vast majority of all abduction stories are bullshit. I'm just starting to enter into that camp. I just don't see, you know, my skepticism is overruling the anecdotal stories. There's just not enough there in an anecdotal story. And by the way, an anecdotal story typically won't hold up in court. You know what I mean? It's just not the kind of thing that anybody really takes too seriously.
Right.
But speaking of stories, why don't you tell us a good story? What's the best Bigfoot story, the most compelling story that you've come across?
There's tons of great Bigfoot stories. Like, if you really want to get into it, there's tens of thousands of Bigfoot stories from all over North America. Dave Paulides, he gets into a lot of ones, missing 411 cases that could be related to Bigfoot. But some of my favorite, one in particular that took place out in BC. Now, this story is known as the Albert Otsman account. And Albert Otsman was basically on the Toba Inlet, which is basically maybe about 2 hours north of Vancouver, which is the biggest city there in British Columbia. And so this guy was out, and this happened in 1924. This guy was out in the middle of nowhere, just camping, and he was just sleeping by the fire. He had no tent. And he remembers being picked up in the night, and he was in the sleeping bag. So the thing picked up his sleeping bag with him in it and carried him through the woods, running through the forest. Eventually, they got to Albert Otsman described it as kind of like a rocky area, kind of surrounded by all sides by kind of high cliff edges, and it was maybe about 50 to 100 feet from each side of the rocks. And basically, the guy was completely surrounded by rocks on all sides, and he claims to have been there with a Bigfoot family. And he said there were 2 larger ones, and I think 2 or 3 smaller Bigfoots. And this guy ended up spending 6 days, apparently, with these things. And he eventually loaded himself into their confidence to the point where he was eventually able to escape. And he did, after the 6th day, get the hell out of there. And he claims that the thing was making a hell of a lot of racket following him out of the forest. And this is one of the more popular Bigfoot stories, but it's also one of the more wacky ones where somebody claims to have seen several of these creatures in the forest, and they tried to feed him different things that they were eating. He tried to feed them some canned foods that he had brought with him into the forest. And apparently they were revolted by the canned food that he was trying to share with them.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, I seem to recall reading that story somewhere. It's been a while, but that's very familiar.
See, that's one of the more famous Bigfoot cases. Another one would be the Jerry Crew sighting, where there were these guys that were going in, they were cutting a road through virgin timber there in Northern California, and this took place around Bluff Creek in Humboldt County. And this is the exact same area. This is within 20 miles of where the Patterson-Gimlin film took place. And these things apparently were interacting with the roadwork crew, where they were throwing big spools of wire down into the riverbeds. They were damaging different equipment that they had, and this took place in 1958. So this was about 10 years before the Patterson-Gimlin footage took place, was filmed there. And where the word Bigfoot comes from was this case in particular, where on the dusty plowed road, they found big human-looking footprints, and that's where it comes from. Bigfoot was this case in particular, the Jerry Crew sightings. And a lot of people that were working there on the roadwork crew, claim to have seen this thing.
Gandalf, are you familiar with the Dyatlov Pass incident?
Oh, yeah, in the Ural Mountains.
Yeah. What's your opinion on that in relation to the topic?
See, the Dyatlov Pass incident, whatever took place there, I'd say would be much more mysterious and paranormal than Bigfoot could possibly be. remember what happened to a lot of those people. They claim to have just been a bunch of people out in the woods, and they were up in this mountain. And remember, the name of the mountain, the Dalatov Pass, I believe, is translated into English from the it's kind of like they're like a Kazakh related people, kind of like very similar actually to Native Americans genetically. And they had named this place the Dalatov Pass. The mountain in their language was the Devil's Mountain. And what happened there is much more bizarre than a typical Bigfoot encounter, where these people were found to have ripped holes through their tent from the inside out. Right. And ran off in all different directions. People were found. One guy was found about a mile away. Another person was found 20 feet away. And these people's chests were it's like they had been hit by a train.
Yeah, they had serious blunt force trauma that was hard to explain.
But what's really bizarre about the Dalatov Pass incident is it is, I'd say it's more missing 411 related than it would be to a typical Bigfoot encounter.
So you keep bringing up David Paulides. What kind of, and I'm pretty familiar with David Paulides, and I'm familiar with a lot of the stories that he tells. I have not seen his documentary in full. I've seen like promos and clips of it. And my opinion of what I've seen of his documentary is pretty poor. It's very like made for TV, kind of, sensationalized.
I'd recommend anyone who's looking into missing 411 to not watch the documentary that was eventually released. It would simply be to listen to Dave Paulides do interviews on, say, Coast to Coast.
Yeah, his interviews are good, and the stories that he tells are creepy. But from a skeptical point of view, they are just stories. I have not seen a shred of anything solid from anything that he has said. And it's not that I'm doubting, but I'm doubting. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is with missing 411, a lot of the stories that he reports all have really similar characteristics to them. And a lot of them, at first when Dave Paulides was getting into this information, he wouldn't try and draw conclusions. So he would leave it, he'd present the information and he'd leave it up to interpretation from the viewer, the listener, or the reader. And nowadays he's more so getting into giving his own opinion on what he thinks it is. And a lot of the times he believes that some of these things have to do with, say, what could be described as a Bigfoot encounter. But a lot of other missing 411 cases are actually highly, highly paranormal, very strange encounters with lights, UFOs, getting all the way into the absolute fringe of people having run-ins with Lemurians. And that's a very particular case that happened near Mount Shasta.
So what initially got you into even spending time taking this stuff seriously?
Well, the best way to describe it is, if you have an encounter with something extremely bizarre, you will lend credence to other people explaining their own bizarre stories. Now, I've told the story before. My own Bigfoot encounter. That took place in 2006. That's really when, like, I was always quasi interested in stuff like Bigfoot. I always thought it was a fascinating topic, similar to UFOs. But when I had this encounter with something, I never saw something. I only heard what I heard in the woods that night. Ever since then, I've been getting more and more towards believing in something like Bigfoot. Now, say if this didn't happen to me in 2006, who knows where I would stand on this subject? Probably exactly where you are now, where you're really, really skeptical about something like this existing. And I can totally understand that because I was there, I would think somebody explaining a Bigfoot stories would sound like they're totally out of their mind, and there's no way in hell there's something like this out there. But might as well tell it. We're on the Bigfoot show, so I might as well just describe what happened. Me and my buddies were out in the woods camping by this pond, and we heard rustling in the woods, and this went on all night. But where it all started was I simply decided to, we were drinking, so we're having a campfire, and I was drunk, but I wasn't smashed or anything like that. I was quite lucid about what was going on. But I went over to pick up some wood for the fire, and we had a bunch of cut logs ready to go. For some reason or another, it was 3 a.m, and I think I was maybe trying to wake up some of my buddies that were all passed out in the tents. And I took a log and I threw it into the pile of logs, and it made an echoing sound throughout the forest. And maybe about 2-3 seconds after I did that, we heard a loud creature, whatever the fuck it was. I still don't even know what the hell it was, but it made a screaming sound. And if you want to know what this sounds like, it's the famous Ohio howl. So I heard this scream come through the forest, and I was like, what? We all looked at each other. There were 3 of us still awake at this point. We all looked at each other, and we kind of froze. We all had goosebumps. I took up another log and threw it into the pile of logs again. And this time, the sound that echoed back at us sounded like it was the same thing, but it was pissed. Like it was an angry sound. The first vocalization that we heard sounds exactly 100% identical to the famous Ohio howl recording.
Yeah, do you have that? Do you want to play that since we're on the subject?
It would probably be best if you were to be able to share that. Just type in, it'll be the top result that you type in when you type in Ohio howl or Bigfoot sound.
All right. I'm going. I'm looking. Give me a minute. It's called the Ohio howl.
Ohio howl. And it was years later, so I did not know what the name of this sound was. I simply was going on YouTube, and I was like, hey, I remember, this happened maybe in 2009 or 10. I was like, hey, that weird sound that my buddies all heard in high school back in 2006. And when this happened, I think it was my 17th birthday when I heard this. So it was years later in 2009 or 10 or something, and I was just like, that was a really bizarre sound that we heard. I wonder if anyone else has ever recorded a Bigfoot sound that sounds anywhere similar to this. Oh, it's pretty sketchy on yeah, this is pretty bad quality for hearing it, I guess. If anyone were interested in this, simply look up this exact video. This is the exact video I found years ago.
Here's an amplified and filtered version. I think it's weird that this particular video creator puts an annotation in here, and it says, note the long arch shape, a differentiator from other type of howls, without providing any other kind of howls. It's just a blanket statement, but whatever.
This particular YouTuber, I believe they've uploaded several different Bigfoot recordings.
I'll try this one and see if it's any louder. There's a commercial coming up. Holy shit. Really? For a 1-minute video? All right, it's just a little.
That's why I've got my. I've got like 4 different ad blockers. I hate ads.
Can you guys hear that okay?
Pretty much.
Still kind of quiet. If anyone's interested in hearing exactly what this is, simply look it up yourself right now in the sidebar or in another window and just mute us for a second on this video and listen to it yourself. Like, blast up the volume. The first vocalization that you hear, like, look at the analyzed version of it. That's basically exactly what we heard. The first time I threw a log into the pile of logs and created an echo. Yeah, it's quite quiet. But
that was just a tiny bit louder. It's essentially the same thing.
But the second time I threw a log into the pile of logs and it created the echo through the forest, the vocalization was aggressive. Like, it sounded pissed. And we're talking, I was maybe, in American terms, I was maybe about 200 or 300 feet from whatever this thing was. So it was relatively close. And, you know, being as close as we were to this thing, we heard the vibrations of this thing's body. And, you know, if you're around, like, kind of like people, anyone who lives in a rural area, you know, the resonance of a horse, for example. You know how loud, and you know the body of a horse. Whatever we heard that night had to have been the body of a horse, at least the same size of as a full-grown horse.
You're guessing what, based on the overall volume of the noise?
The volume of the noise and the resonance. We're talking like the resonance of 10 men.
So earlier you said that Bigfoot was, like, you know, really timid.
For the most part, they are.
Well, okay, for the most part. So I guess I just want to maybe circle back to the idea that if they're so timid, why would they knock logs and sticks against trees, and why would they throw sticks and rocks at people if they're so timid? That's obviously a non sequitur. That just doesn't.
Well, of course, no. But remember what I said. Very, very few cases result in an interaction. So for the most part, any normal person walking through the woods with their dog, Bigfoot's going to stay clear within a mile's distance. It's very rare that you'll have one decide to interact, because they decide to interact with you. You do not go out looking and find these things. They decide to interact, and it's very, very rare for them to overcome their timidity and to approach any group of people.
So what kind of other stories have you heard of where there were physical interactions with maybe death or injury? How many of those stories pop up?
See, differentiating the different ones is kind of hard. Like, there's, okay, that video I put up on the Gandalf channel where I recite the story that took place in Colorado. I don't know if that was real or not. I kind of doubt that it was real. But there's a lot of different stories where people claim to have been either ran into this. They claim that they've seen upright walking, hairy biped run into them through the woods just at night. They are just walking down the trail. But it's a real rarity, having any type of physical encounter with something like this. There's one story that took place, and it was a young boy and his grandfather were out camping, and they were by a lake. I think this took place in Western Virginia, and they're both camping by a lake, and they heard a splash maybe take place right near them. And they saw like the ripples of the water, and they turned around, and the grandfather shot off his gun. And once they did this, they claimed to have seen a rock that was about the size of, we're talking maybe a 20, 30-pound rock, be thrown about 40 feet over the tree line, and it hit the water maybe about 10 feet from them. And they were both terrified. This thing came out of the woods, and apparently the grandfather shot at it several times. And the grandfather claimed that he was shaking the entire time, so he doesn't even know if he hit the thing or not. Both of them sped off in the grandfather's truck as fast as they possibly could, and they claimed that the thing was chasing their truck. Now, it could have resulted simply from a simple, slightly innocent interaction where it was throwing a rock, but when the grandfather shot off the gun in its direction, it became aggressive.
Could be.
It's like Mongo. It's like Mongo from Blazing Saddles. No, don't shoot him. You'll just make him angry.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, for the most part, these things are very peaceful, non-aggressive in any way, but a lot of the stories relate to people pissing them off, and that's when they actually become aggressive. So most of the time, though, only encounter you will have with these things is audio. So you'll hear a noise, either be it wood knocking or some type of vocalization, and it won't ever result in it going any further than that. It's very rare you will actually see one of these things approach you. And remember, we're dealing with the smallest percent now of encounters. So that ever result in anything beyond simple vocalization. The next step beyond that would be things like rocks being thrown, and the step beyond that would be actual visual encounters where these things confront you. That would be maybe 1% in 1,000 where you'll actually see this thing.
So it's like classified like UFOs. It's a close encounter of the first kind, second kind, third kind.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I want to circle back a little bit to the idea of people being primed, the concept of regurgitating stories that they have already heard. You know, people out in the woods, they hear a strange noise and then they go home and they tell their friends they had a Bigfoot encounter. And of course, people are liars, people exaggerate. You know, people have egos and people are fucking psychopaths sometimes. So, I mean, and what was it you said? You only 2%? That when I asked you was, you know, how many of these stories do you think are literally just people making shit up? And you literally gave me, was it 2%? Is that what you said?
Oh, when we back then you were asking about the rock throwing encounters.
Oh.
And I related that many of these rock throwing encounters happen in places like northern Manitoba, northwestern Ontario, or Alaska. Places that are in the middle of nowhere. There's no roads leading into these places. The only way to get to these places in northern Manitoba, like parts of Alaska, the only way to get to these lakes is by float plane. So I find it extremely unlikely that there's someone in the woods waiting for these float planes to arrive simply to throw rocks at armed hunters.
Well, okay, when I brought that up, I wasn't suggesting that anybody was waiting around to throw rocks. But in this situation, you know, we talked earlier about hermits, people who live out in the woods and just want to be alone. And then there are, let's just say, how about a couple of drunken rednecks who are camping half a mile away, who detect campers over the ridge, and they decide to go fuck with them. You know, for a laugh.
See, like, see, that's possible. Like, but I find it extremely unlikely that many of these rock throwing encounters that happen at these remote lakes have anything to do with like some yahoos. And when I was explaining to you about the hermits that live up there in northern Ontario, a lot of these places, especially in northwestern Ontario near the Manitoba border, there's literally nothing there. There's the main Trans Canada Highway that links into Manitoba, but that's one road in an area the size of upstate New York or twice the size of Georgia. There's one road in that entire area.
Okay, that's fucking wilderness right there.
Yes.
So if you were to go up onto one of these lakes to fuck with somebody, you would literally be trekking through an area of land the size of Georgia to get to that lake to fuck with somebody. Look it up on Google Earth right now, Western Ontario, to see what I mean. Along the Manitoba border. Aside from the Trans-Canada Highway, which is a 2-lane road, we're not talking about a highway. We call it the Trans-Canada Highway because it's the only road that links across Canada. It's a 2-lane road for the most part. When you get out of the southern Ontario region, you're on a 2-lane road, and that's the Trans-Canada Highway linking into Manitoba, where it eventually becomes a highway linking out to British Columbia.
So have you heard of, let me tell you a quick story. Maybe you've heard of this. In the New Mexico desert, there was a psychological study done with, I think it was a group of 10 or 15 or plus or minus 10 or 15 people. And these people were taken out on like a nature hike, and they were close to, Area 51. They were out in New Mexico. And so everybody knew that they were near the Area 51 border of, the no-go zone play, right? And they were just out having a nature hike in the New Mexico desert. And they had a guide. And as they walked along the trail, they got close to the fence or the border where you're not supposed to go beyond. And the guide told all the people in the group, said, okay, this is, this area is cordoned off and there's some military people out here doing something, yada, yada. And we're just going to go ahead and move on, and they'll do their thing, and we're going to continue on with our little hike. And as they walked, there was a man in a military uniform holding an AR-15. He wasn't pointing it. He was just holding it. It was aimed, casually holding it, pointing it at the ground. And so everybody had their little nature hike, and nothing happened. Nobody spoke to the military guy. He just sort of stood 10, 15 feet away, but everybody could see him. And then they interviewed the people 6 months later. Okay, this was like some sort of psychological experiment on the psyche of how people remember things, right? And when the people were interviewed on their experience, they gave wildly different versions of the story. And some of them people were so wildly different that some of the people were saying things like, yeah, and there was a craft, and they were guarding it, and there were 25 guys with guns, and they pointed guns at us. All kinds of shit that just never happened. And these people were wearing helmet cams, okay? So they all had these little, helmets with a little, like a GoPro or something on. And so you could see what every person was seeing. And so as they interviewed the individual people, they showed you the footage of what this person saw and what that person saw. And then, like I said, some people said, and he pointed his gun right at me. And then they showed the footage, and the woman looked at it, and the guy was just standing there. So just bunches and bunches of false memories, right? Have you seen that? Are you familiar with that kind of study?
I'm like vaguely aware of that. I think I've seen whatever you're describing years ago, though.
Yeah, it's pretty old. But the point is, and lots of other studies have been done to show that people's memories are often pretty damn terrible. You know, people make shit up. People have egos. People have all kinds of motivations for, you know, just exaggerating or outright lying in some cases, or in some cases, genuinely, honestly misremembering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that a lot of times that this happens where people simply misremember some kind of encounter that they're having. But most of these stories, like there's lots of recordings of the different vocalizations. A lot of them all match up with each other. Most people all describe similar things happening, especially when it comes to something like wood knocking, which is, in my opinion, the most telling sign of Bigfoot interacting with people, aside from vocalizations. I don't so much buy into the Todd Standing belief that a bunch of trees falling down or a tree ripped up and put on its head is indicative of a Bigfoot. I'm more so lent towards wood knocking and vocalizations being the best examples of Bigfoot evidence. And all these stories are all identical.
Well, just so you know, I'm the kind of guy who would be one of those guys who would fuck with somebody. Just for a laugh. You know what I mean? If I detected some campers that were out in the wilderness, if I was out in the wilderness camping, and Nancy and I, we go camping all the time. We've been to Alaska twice, you know, and we got our RV and we're going, you know, next month for a camping trip up in North Carolina. And we hike the trails and we go out in the woods. And Nancy and I would joke around with each other and we call Bigfoot, or we call each other. We go, whoop. We do that, whoop. Sometimes we do it here in the house just for fun, just for a laugh. And I can tell you, for when I'm camping, I carry with me, among other things, a slingshot and a pack of steel ball bearings. Sometimes it's fun to just, you know, slingshot and targets, but sometimes we camp at the lake, and sometimes I'm in a little alcove, and somebody on the other side of the alcove will be fishing, and I will shoot a couple of steel balls out into the water just a few feet away from where they're standing to make it look like a fish jumped. And I'll giggle my ass off, because you should just see somebody standing there fishing, and it's a boring, you know, hour, half hour, 10 minutes, whatever goes by. You're standing there, nothing happens, and then splash, and then they jerk their head over sideways, and they reel it in real fast, and then they cast out where the splash was. To me, that is just fucking hilarious. Okay? So I have messed with people on more than one occasion just for fun. I'm just saying.
You're the sort of person I used to hate when I was a kid.
I'm just saying, it's fun.
Well, see, that's the whole thing. When it comes to a lot of this information, a lot of it is like, it's whacked and out there, you know what I mean? A lot of these stories could be interpreted as some type of just people messing around. Could be a couple rednecks messing around with somebody. It could be somebody in a costume screwing with somebody, right? But it's just like the whole UFO encounters. Sometimes, like, okay, for example, the Phoenix Lights, okay? Everyone knows about the Phoenix Lights. That's one of the more famous UFO sightings. Now, that is extremely unlikely that it was just a figment of people's imagination, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then there's the more famous stories like the Jerry Crew sightings that took place, or the Patterson-Gimlin. Those are examples of the Phoenix Lights to the Bigfoot world. But, you know, a lot of people could be misinterpreting. Like, I'm leaving that totally open. And remember, I'm only about 75% sure that Bigfoots exist out there. But, you know, it's really easy to it is really easy to brush away a large amount of Bigfoot stories. It really is, as just being hoaxes, people messing around, people hearing a tree fall in the woods and interpreting it as a wood knock. And it's similar to UFOs, where a lot of people that think that they're seeing UFOs are seeing swamp gas. You know what I mean?
Sure. No, I mean, the swamp gas explanation is the lamest of all, but I know what you're saying.
No, that's kind of a joke. Like, for the most part, like a lot of people that are claiming that they're seeing UFOs are seeing airplanes for the most part, or they're seeing satellites, or they're seeing, when it comes to the more believable UFO encounters or sightings, they're seeing some type of experimental black project reconnaissance plane of some kind. And, I'm certain a large percentage of UFO encounters are simply those things. But then there's the more anomalous UFO encounters, for example, the Phoenix Lights, where I think it was like somewhere with like around 100 or 200,000 people saw the Phoenix Lights.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly just a couple or so.
Right.
No, it was over a city of over 1 million people.
Yeah.
So you got to have discernment when it comes to this stuff. You can't take every story as gospel. And it's just like UFOs. Not every single person that's claiming to see a UFO is actually seeing an alien. They're simply seeing an unidentified flying object, which could be anything.
Sure. So what do you think in the realm of the big feet? What is, in your opinion, the most credible story?
Honestly, I'd say the Jerry Crew is probably one of the most credible stories, where the loggers were cutting the road through the forest, because a lot of people did see it. They actually did get casts of the Bigfoot's footprints that were found on this freshly plowed road. Even more credible, I would say, than the Patterson-Gimlin footage, I'd say, was the Jerry Crew sightings that took place 10 years prior to that in the same exact county in Northern California.
10 years prior?
Yeah, the Jerry Crew sightings.
Jerry Crew? 10 years before the Patterson film?
10 years, exactly 10 years before.
Is that Gerr or GE?
Gerry. CREW.
And crew as in a crew of workers?
Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, check it out right now. Jerry Crew. I'll check it out right now for you.
And the Patterson film was what, 72?
That was in 1967.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Did you say 60 something?
Yeah, 1967.
67, okay. And you're saying 10 years before that was the Jerry Crew sighting?
Yeah, and it happened in Humboldt County, near Bluff Creek. So they both happened 10 years apart in the same exact county.
Humboldt County. God, that sounds really familiar, and I don't know why. And I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with Bigfoot. But Humboldt County, to me, sounds...
It has something to do with some herbal medicine that gets grown in that area.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty infamous place for it to come from.
Humboldt sounds really familiar to me, and I can't say that that's why, but
oh well.
I don't know.
Everyone's saying that the best pot's from Humboldt County.
Yep.
And this is also California?
Yep.
Yeah, the same exact county in Northern California, Bluff Creek.
Oh, the same county as the Patterson film?
Exact same county.
Oh, maybe that's why it's familiar. Okay.
So when you go to that part of California, you'll see lots of Bigfoot-related stuff, though. Just trust me on that. It's a lot of roadside diners named after Bigfoot to, like, anything you can imagine Bigfoot-related. They sell it in that part of California.
Okay.
Nice.
Mad Pie Man says next to Hazard County. Come on.
There you go. There you go.
All right, Gandalf. Holy crap, we've gone 2.5 hours. You said you could do 12 hours. What else do you have for me?
Man, I could just go on. Like, I think I'll actually avoid going too deep into this.
Come on, we're into the woo-woo territory. Just go there.
Well,
you're already a shill in our eyes, so just do it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I've already been. I'm pretty sure some people will come off and think that I'm some kind of. Well, people already think I'm working in Tel Aviv right now, so I guess I got nothing to lose.
Well, you're doing a damn good Canadian accent if you are from Tel Aviv.
Yeah, really.
Really?
Well, yeah, you're doing an awesome Canadian accent.
Yeah, it's really subtle, actually.
When I was doing what's it like
in a natural kind of way.
People always try and mimic the Canadian accent, and I guess it's like this elusive thing, kind of similar to Bigfoot, where it's hard to really copy. It's not like doing a Southern accent or a British accent, apparently.
True.
Mad Pie Man. He's shilling for BFO Sod.
Well, okay, this is going to get into what I would consider hardcore woo-woo territory.
Go. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Well, a lot of people, some Bigfoot researchers, and a lot of these people are shunned by the Bigfoot community at large as being kind of like shills. So a lot of people, when it comes to conspiracy theory, there's people that come out with information that's so bizarre and so whacked out that it seems to discredit the entire topic. And that's why that's why I'm extremely reluctant to even get into any of this information. I don't believe in it myself, but a lot of people claim that Bigfoot exists in the realm of other paranormal creatures. Like we're talking the Mothman, Goatman, Dogman, Chupacabra, Loch Ness Monster.
Oh, don't be dogging on the Loch Ness Monster.
Well, this is the thing. Some of this stuff is so out there, like leprechauns, goblins, trolls. Some of these, the more out there, bizarre paranormal events. Like I'm interested in a lot of fairies.
Well, I see fairies every year at the Gay Pride Parade.
That's right.
Well, that's where you most likely go look for them, then. I remember seeing some leprechauns one night, though, but they were drunk out of their minds, and it happened in a pretty populated area.
All right, so go ahead. You were going to tell us a story.
Well, so when it comes to this, the more woo-woo aspect of Bigfoot, a lot of people explain away the reason that they haven't ever discovered a Bigfoot body is, I'm just going to lay it right out there, that they're trans-dimensional beings. Yeah. So a lot of people get really pissed off.
Wait. I walked away I had to get some more wine. I'm sorry. What was the last thing you said that made Amy go,
A lot of people believe that the reason that they haven't ever discovered Bigfoot bodies is because Bigfoot can simply be explained away as something not existing in our reality. They believe that Bigfoot is somehow a paranormal entity to some extent.
Okay, I've heard those stories. I've heard people say that they saw Bigfoot, he screamed, I saw a flash of light, and he was gone. It's creepy, weird, just out there stories. Super
And
freak.
A lot of people have claimed to have found trackways of Bigfoot footprints that simply vanish. As they're following them, looking at the Bigfoot prints, the Bigfoot simply disappears. Or some people have claimed to have seen Bigfoot standing there looking at them, and it simply vanishes into thin air. There are these stories, but who knows if they're exactly credible or not. But you know, there are these people out there that explain away the reasons for the never discovering a body is simply, once it dies, it simply vanishes out of this dimension.
Okay, now I have to tell you my woo-woo hypothesis on Bigfoot.
Do it.
Okay. So we've all seen Star Wars and we all know Chewbacca.
Yep.
And we've heard the stories that you just described and the ones that we just covered just now about, you know, Bigfoot vanishing in a flash of light. He screams and vanishes and, you know,
Roof,
flashes.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second.
Go ahead.
Chewbacca is actually directly based off of Bigfoot,
Well,
according to George Lucas.
Well, no doubt. No doubt. No doubt. Okay, so here's my woo-woo hypothesis on Bigfoot. That Bigfoot is a pet. There's an alien race buzzing around, and Bigfoot is like a cat or a dog. He's kind of not a stowaway, but more of a ride-along, a pet. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's almost like every now and then they let him off to take a shit. You know what I mean? The UFO stops down, and I'm serious because this fits right in the woo-woo side of the Bigfoot stories, because a lot of times you'll see people or hear people say things, tell stories about Bigfoot and UFOs simultaneously. Like I said, there are stories where people say that they see a Bigfoot, and then he lets out a loud scream. There's a flash of light, and he disappears.
And
So my super duper woo woo hypothesis is that Bigfoot hangs out with the aliens as maybe a companion or some sort of pet, and every now and then they have to let him off to take a dump. And so he roams around the forest, and he, you know, takes a piss, and he does his business and scratches the litter box, and then they zap him back up. That's, you know what I mean? There it is. There's my super duper. Explain it all. That it sort of does explain a lot, doesn't it?
There are actual people that have described that exactly what you just described as being the explanation for Bigfoot. I'm not even joking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, almost word for word.
Wow.
Wow, I've never actually heard that. I thought that was my own crazy idea.
Well, some people that are interested in this could be construed as being full-blown nuts. You know what I mean? See, it is such a wacky topic. You know what I mean? You know, I never thought that when I was younger that I could possibly believe in such a thing existing, you know, but, you know, after having the encounter that I had where I heard the vocalization of Bigfoot after doing my own wood knocking, and I did the wood knocking by accident. So when I threw the logs into the pile of log and it created the echoing sound, that's basically the wood knocking, and I did that completely by accident, which triggered the vocalization. You know, if I never had that encounter, I think that, like most people that hear this information, I think, oh, there's no fucking way there's a goddamn fucking big hairy beast, humanoid living in the woods. You know, but I think it all comes down to people will believe in things only once they have experienced it for themselves. So if you have a bizarre encounter with, say, you know, something really strange that's taboo, you know, you will believe in other people with taboo stories themselves after you have had your own encounter, but only afterwards. 90% of people that listen to this information will just think it's completely out there until the day comes when they have their own encounter with something bizarre and paranormal.
I can definitely agree with you that most people would be that way.
Okay, so you got into this initially because you had your camping experience where you heard something close or identical to the Ohio howl. That was what got you really, you know, in that direction, or
That's it. If I didn't have the encounter with hearing what I heard that night with my buddies, I think it was completely crazy too, no doubt. I'd still maybe have, which I'm guesstimating you're at, Roof, which is maybe a 10 percentile 20 percentile at most belief in something like this existing. I'd probably be right where you are.
So, how many buddies?
There was about 8 of us in all, and only me and 2 other of my buddies were awake at this point.
Was it a sausage fest? I mean, did anybody have their girlfriends? Was it a guys' night out? What the hell are we talking about here?
Yeah, it was like a sausage fest. It will be the best way to describe it.
And
what is the sausage fest?
I'm sorry, Amy, what?
What is the sausage fest?
There's no poontang around.
No poontang. No girls around.
Oh, okay.
A bunch of swinging dicks.
Oh, okay.
So how about, were all of your buddies, did they all hear it, or some of them crashed, or what was the scenario?
Only 3 of us heard it that night. Me and my 2 other buddies that were still awake. I think it was like 2:30, 3 in the morning or something like that. The bizarre part, I totally forgot to mention this, but the bizarre part about it was that it was me and my 2 other buddies that were still awake. We all eventually crashed somewhere around dawn because we were fucking tripping balls about what the fuck was out in the woods that night. And so we all tried to stay up as late as we possibly could. But my one buddy got out of the tent in the morning, and I think this was maybe like 8 o'clock or so in the morning. It was still pretty dim outside, but the sun was definitely up at this point. I remember seeing him get up out of the tent, and he was passed out. He was not awake at all when this took place. He got up out of the tent. He was maybe outside of the tent for about 15 seconds or so before he ran back into the tent, claiming that he saw something outside standing there with its arm on a tree.
Wow.
And so that kind of validates it slightly. It wasn't, and he was totally passed out. I think he crashed like an hour or 2 before we heard what we heard that night.
And so the 2 other guys that heard the noise with you, are you still friends with them? Are they into this subject? Are they doing anything about what they heard? Did they just go on, live their lives? What's the story with those guys?
Oh, of course. Like, for the most part, they don't really lend much credence to it. They know that they heard something, like a really bizarre sound that night, like what we heard in the woods. Actually, it's my buddy that got out of the tent in the morning and saw what he saw, who was actually far more interested in it than the other 2 guys that heard what we heard that night.
And do you still talk to those guys?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Hang out with this. He actually came up to the one buddy who saw it in the morning. Actually, we went camping recently in Algonquin Park.
Okay, so they're not like so creeped out that they can't talk about it, like a abduction scenario where people are just, closed down. Is it nothing? Is it anything like that at all?
No, like they accept that it happened and will talk about it if a topic ever comes up, but it's not something really to obsess over, I would say.
Okay, so now that we've had this discussion, are you more motivated now to take your trail cams out back to that trail where the sign and the chicken you found?
Well, I doubt that I'll be getting a run-in with a Bigfoot. I'd most likely be running into some kind of whacked out fucking hermit out there, man.
Sure, but it would be good. It'd be a good YouTube video.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. If I ever survive to upload the thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you caught something decent, somebody out there fucking around, like cutting off a rooster's head in the middle of fucking. You said it was a mile from your house, and you found a dead rooster without. And by the way, was it missing its head?
I never checked, dude. I filmed. I only ever got as close as I filmed in that video to the thing, and then I got the fuck out of there. And I went back a completely different direction to get out of the forest.
But you go out in the woods all the time. So have you ever seen? Is it uncommon? Have you ever seen chickens, roosters out in the middle of nowhere in fucking Canada?
One time, not kind of closer to where my house is, I actually found a pit with maybe somewhere around 20,000 chickens slaughtered in it. Like we're talking about a 30-foot by 30-foot hole that had about it looked like a dumpster truck full of chickens dumped into the hole.
Wait, you came across this out in the woods?
Yeah, one time. But this was like over 15 years ago.
Really, in the middle of nowhere?
Slightly in the middle of nowhere, kind of closer to the town.
I mean, there are like, chicken and beef recalls where they have to dispose of livestock. I mean, we got a beef recall going on in America right now with the E. coli situation where somebody died and they had to recall, tons of fucking beef. This happens all the time. There's a thing going on in Australia where somebody's putting needles into strawberries and they disposed of tons and tons of fucking strawberries. So you're telling me that you stumbled across a giant pit full of dead chickens practically in the middle of nowhere?
But I would have said this happened probably over 12, 13, 14 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, but what my question is, this is like what, out in the middle of the woods somewhere?
Yeah, almost in the middle of nowhere, but there were like ATV trails and whatnot leading to this area.
That's bizarre.
Bizarre.
Even though I was kind of like, I suppose to say a bit more dim when I was at that age, I think I postulated that it probably was some type of sickness related thing that a farmer went out into the middle of nowhere to dump all these chickens.
Wow. Okay. That's just bizarre that they would dispose of them in that manner, but okay.
Yeah, just a giant hole in the middle of the forest, you know what I mean? But it was relatively open, kind of like a more grasslandy kind of area where I found this hole.
Okay, that's pretty weird. Okay, so I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. I'm going to expect you to be out there tomorrow since it's Saturday. Tomorrow's Saturday. And unless you got something important to do, you need to take a walk and go set up your trail cams.
Yeah.
And the rest of YouTube will be waiting with anticipation with what you capture.
You bet.
Well, if you never hear from me again, I had an axe driven into my head somewhere in the woods.
I'll start a GoFundMe page for you if you disappear. Not that it'll help you any.
Well, I already started a Patreon, you guys, so the link's over on my channel's homepage.
You did?
No, he didn't. Okay, Gandalf, I can't believe it. It's already been 2 hours and 48 minutes. What else do you have for us?
Well, there's hundreds of stories when it comes to Bigfoot,
Tell me a good story. Give me a good story.
Yeah, give us a good story.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a really you might call it good. Okay, so this happened in Colorado. Guy had a cabin right up in the middle of the woods, kind of in the mountainous region there of Colorado, which is basically half the state, I'd say. So it's not too specific. I could probably dig up exactly where this took place. So Buddy's going out through the woods, and he's going up to check on his cabin to see if there's any tree fall damage, see if there's anything that's crashed on the thing possibly in the middle since the winter. And this was early spring when this took place. I think this was in 2017. So he's on his way to his cabin, and halfway there to his cabin, he claims that a large black ape-like creature jumped on him from above him, like out of a tree, and he says that the thing punched him in the face. So he wakes up maybe around 30 seconds later, and he claims that he saw a female Bigfoot with breasts. He saw breasts, and he claims that the female Bigfoot was ripping off his pants and was attempting to sexually assault him and rape him, is what he thought was happening.
Okay, this is...
He quickly took out his hunting knife, and he says he stabbed the thing in the arm. It let out a shriek and ran off into the woods. The Colorado Department of Fish and Wildlife and the county police had put out an APB for an ape-like female ape-like creature who was wanted on sexual assault charges.
I don't know. That sounds almost like April Fool's.
This was on a mainline hunting website.
Wow.
This was reported on a mainline hunting website.
Wow.
A mainline hunting site? You mean like what's the fishing
something like the Ducks Unlimited kind of website.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't think of the other one. My dad used to subscribe to all those hunting magazines, and I just couldn't think of them quick enough off the top of my head.
Fishing, yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Game. I think there's one used to be called Fishing Game. I don't know if it's still a magazine. So this was reported in a mainstream or a mainline?
Mainline. I'm pretty sure I could dig. I saved the article. I'm pretty sure I could dig it up, the entire thing. It's like 2 or 3 paragraphs long, the entire story. But that's basically the gist of what happened.
Adelaide said, "Rapey Bigfoot." So we got a Bigfoot rapey story, huh? Bigfoot.
Yeah. So a female Bigfoot rapist.
Wow.
Or attempted Bigfoot rapist. The guy luckily made off with just stabbing the thing in the arm and it took off, apparently.
Well, if that was a real story, I would expect somebody to take blood samples off of that knife.
Yeah.
See, that might be in the whole hoaxy bullshit side of Bigfoot.
You think? Bigfoot's taking my pants off?
Highly probable.
Bigfoot knocked me out, and I woke up, and she was taking my pants off. Really? You think that's a hoax?
Couldn't be.
Well, then it comes back to Dave Paulitis. How Dave Paulitis is always having these blood samples sent in, and it always comes out that it's some type of. It's almost, the DNA is almost 99.9% accurate to human DNA. Whenever they send in so-called Bigfoot DNA to be analyzed, it always ends up being almost identical to human DNA, which would match up to the Native Americans who claim that it was a hairy man. The Native Americans never claimed that the thing was like a beast. In the direct translation to Salish, which is Saskaetz, which basically just translate to wild man or hairy man. It's not like a furry beast monster creature. It's just simply Saskaetz or Sasquatch, which when it's anglicized is simply hairy man. So it could be a hominid that's just simply extremely related to human beings, like very close as say Neanderthal is. And keep in mind, there is evidence that humans and Neanderthal intermixed at some point 20, 30,000 years ago.
Oh yeah, there are lineages that they've discovered Neanderthal DNA in that are alive today.
Yeah, and like I was mentioning earlier, there's 4 different known hominids that coexisted with human beings on this planet. 4 confirmed hominids that coexisted. And that's Homo floresian, which is said to have gone extinct 10,000 years ago. Homo neanderthalis, which is said to have gone extinct roughly 25,000 years ago. And then Gigantopithecus, which is said to have gone extinct roughly 100,000 some odd years ago. And then there's Cro-Magnon man, which is said to have gone extinct roughly 20,000 years ago. So there's 4 hominid species, upright walking hominids that existed on the planet Earth right when humans did it. Exactly at the same, humans existed when these 4 other hominids were walking the earth.
Yep.
Well, Gandalf, I got to tell you, man, it's absolutely going to be worth your time to do 2 things. First, go out and set up your trail cams. And second, come back and watch this stream and just read the chat.
Yes.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Because I got to tell you, dude, I'm in tears. I'm trying my best not to burst into laughter almost the entire night. The jokes,
Yes.
the jokes and the banter in the chat is just off the chain hilarious.
No, I've seen some of the comments, but like I've been like looking at my own stuff that I wrote down and stuff. Like I want to rewatch this and read the comments.
I mean, people are saying gender fluid Bigfoot and LGBT Bigfoot.
Well, how do you know what gender that female Bigfoot identified as? You know,
Yeah, really.
Yeah. He might have seen breasts, but it might have identified as a male Bigfoot. So
It may have been
let's not be politically incorrect here. We don't want any lawsuits.
Bigfoot breast implants.
Bobo. Oh, yeah, Bobo. Thank you, Scott. Oh, that's right. There's a fucking TV show where these guys go out Bigfoot hunting, and there's this guy, his name, they call him Bobo, and he's like this big fucking dumbass. And Nancy and I joke all the time because you know the old movie Blazing Saddles with Mongo?
Oh, fuck, I know what you're talking about
Mongo
now.
like candy. So I'm always, every time that show comes on, I say Bobo like candy.
Man, okay, when it comes to all these Bigfoot shows, avoid them all like the plague, unless it's one of those dramatization shows, which is basically someone who's had their own encounter explaining what they experienced when it comes to Bigfoot. There's that show where it's a bunch of rednecks that sound like they're from like Kentucky, East Kentucky or West Virginia, that are setting up traps in the middle of nowhere looking for Bigfoot. Then there's yeah, I'm pretty sure we're thinking about the same thing, where it's like this lesbian looking chick with glasses, a big fat guy that wears a hat, and 2 other characters, and they go looking for Bigfoot.
Sounds like we saw them on the way back to the Pulse nightclub carrying.
You guys, I'm in fucking tears right now. This shit is so. The chat has just fucking got me in tears.
It is hysterical. I agree.
All right, Gandalf. All right. Take it back. Let's be serious for 2 seconds. Did you already say? All right. What is your overall assessment? Did you say like 75% you don't think it's real, but you leave what, 25%?
No, I'm.
Where are you on the reality scale here?
Taking into account my own encounter with Bigfoot, I would say.
Whoa! Your own encounter with Bigfoot. You didn't have.
Yeah, I heard the vocalization.
Wait. You had an encounter with a noise.
Yeah, so when I had the vocalization encounter, basically.
Okay, so let's not say encounter with Bigfoot because it's not confirmed. You heard a sound and that's all there was.
Yeah. Right? Okay, so I would say roughly 60 to 70%. I'm leaning towards the thing existing.
Yeah, from what my research that I've done, which was a long time ago, so I'm not that fresh up on it, I had pretty much arrived in that general probability that it was real.
Well, hell yeah, I got Amy with me.
Yep.
Well, let me see. I gotta be honest, I'm not moved. My position on Bigfoot is still open to the possibility, but I have, my meter, my little needle on the meter scale, it hasn't moved to the left or to the right. I'm pretty much where I was. It's been a fascinating conversation. You've led on to some stuff that I haven't heard, which is interesting. I just, without anything substantially verifiable, objectively, empirically solid evidence,
provable, like a Bigfoot body, is what you're saying.
Well, you know, how about somebody with some credentials saying, look, we found this hair sample and we've actually had a DNA analyzed and it actually matches nothing. But of course, that to me would only register a 0.1 on the needle marker, because people lie, and you know there's all kind of motivations for the public to get information that's just bullshit. So I mean, it's going to take something really substantial. It's in the realm of UFOs. It's going to take more than anecdotal stories for me to move my needle. I'm not saying 100%. You know, I can't prove a negative, and I'm not going to say for sure that I'm not going to say that there is no such thing. It's intriguing, and the stories are fun, and they're interesting, and sometimes creepy, and that's part of the fun. But I'm not there, man. I'm not buying it.
No, I understand, Roof, honestly. Like, and I probably, if I didn't hear what I heard that night, go up on YouTube like 6-7 years later, or like 5 or 6 years later, and find the exact same thing I heard, like decibel per decibel. It was the exact same thing I heard. The Ohio howl is the noise I heard that night. You know, I'd probably be in the exact same region you are, you know. I think that it all comes down to personal experience. People will only believe things once they have seen it for themselves. You know, there's the famous story that took place just north of the Black Sea. And a bunch of people were streaming into these villages just north of the Black Sea. And they were telling everyone in these villages, you need to get the hell out of here. Hundreds of thousands of men are coming to murder you all. They killed everyone in our village. You need to get the hell out of here and come with us, heading west towards the Ottoman border regions, heading towards Byzantium, or what's left of the Eastern Roman Empire, and like the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And they said to these people, you got to come with us or you're all going to be fucking murdered. There's 100,000 men coming this way right now. And everyone just said, okay, you guys are fucking bullshitters. We don't believe a goddamn word you're saying. You're full of shit. Fuck off. We're not going to leave our town so you guys can ransack and steal all our valuables. Within 2 weeks, everyone in that village was dead. And their heads were mounted on spikes because the Mongol horde of Genghis Khan had arrived.
Wow.
So no matter what these people were told, they didn't believe it because they had not seen 100,000 men riding horses for themselves.
Gandalf, thank you for this. It was fun. It was interesting. For sure. It was a good conversation.
Well, hell yeah, that's what it's all about. And, you know, what's the point of, like, hanging out with people if you can't at least have fun once in a while, you know, with this information?
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to have some fun because I got to read this chat because right now people are going ape shit. And I'm not kidding, dude. I got tears in my eyes. It's so funny. Okay, because like in the last few minutes, everybody is like coming up with all these different kinds of Bigfoot, right? Let me see. Broadsword said better. Oh, Broadsword. Somebody said something about Bill Cosby raped Bigfoot, and then Broadsword said he's better looking than Cosby's other women. Hallelujah Chorus said Cosby only rapes trannies. Adelaide said LGBT Bigfoot. Broadsword said I'd pay to see Bigfoot dancing on the pole. Just have nowhere to put the bills. And somebody after that, I forget where, I thought I saw somebody said Bigfoot broke the pole. Let me see. Oh my God, this has been hilarious. This chat is the funniest chat I've ever seen.
Hell, I'm gonna come back and read the whole thing.
Fireman Bigfoot, Freemasonic Bigfoot, Big Bobo will help you, I'm sure. Bigfoot brings all the boys to the yard. Bigfoot in a G-string. Bilderberg Bigfoot. Trumpfoot. Policewoman Bigfoot. Pope Bigfoot.
Transfoot.
I like Adelaide's Roth Bigfoot.
Roth Bigfoot. I didn't see that one.
You know, like Rothschild.
Yeah.
Roth Bigfoot.
We got an alcoholic Bigfoot. Some broadsword said Michelle Obama. That says it all right there.
Yes.
Adelaide said Pope Bigfoot. Bigfoot World Order.
Well, who's to say that Bigfoot's not at the front of the table when it comes to these secret meetings?
Hallelujah chorus, Bride of Bigfoot.
Maybe that's why everyone's been so brainwashed that Bigfoot doesn't exist, because he lies at the center of the entire conspiracy.
Larry Silverfoot, Little Red Riding Bigfoot, Prison Convict Bigfoot, Too Much Peyote, Three Little Feet, The Three Little Feet, Gangbanger Bigfoot, Big Top Bigfoot, Big Feet in the Hood, Pimpin' Bigfoot, Carrot Top Bigfoot, that's a good one. Homie Bigfoot, Streetwalker Bigfoot, Weed Dealer Bigfoot, good one, Adelaide. Christmas Santa Bigfoot, Snoop Bigfoot, Handicap Bigfoot, Angry Lesbian Bigfoot, Dominatrix Bigfoot, Groucho Bigfoot, Kike Bigfoot. Oh, Adelaide, that's harsh. Talmudic Jew Bigfoot, Rabbi Bigfoot, Chinese Bigfoot. Holy shit, this is just funny. Bigfoot on Mars. When Harry met Bigfoot.
That was me. I typed that in.
Good stuff, man. That chat, I swear to God, that's the funniest chat I've ever seen in 100 shows.
Yeah, it's definitely the top.
Dude, where's my Bigfoot?
Oh gosh, I almost don't want to end the show just so that we can sit here and.
I know. I'm with you. 1-800-Bigfoot.
Oh
man, this is fun stuff.
But no, we could always do another Bigfoot show. But, you know, I honestly put off even talking about this for the longest time.
Well, for good reason. I mean, it's pretty fringy stuff.
Oh, totally, man.
But you said, I mean, you said to us that you could do like 12 hours. So give me something that you haven't told us.
Oh, dude.
Good. Just give me something good. I don't care. We're in overtime. Who cares?
Oh, I know, bro. It's just like I had to just I'd suggest anyone who's interested in this information to simply look up some of the other stories, because there are literally tens of thousands of stories that you can just find on YouTube yourself. You know, discern this information for yourself. You know what I mean?
Well, if you're going to discern this information, I recommend you don't read my chat right now. Seems like everybody's having too much fun to take it seriously.
Yeah, I wish I could.
And that's the only way to come at this information. You got to be, you got to see it through, like I said at the beginning, you got to see this through a slightly comical lens. You know what I mean?
Yep. I wish I could mirror the chat too.
Oh.
You know, when I bring it down, everybody's going to be hearing, listening and going, oh, I wanted to see the chat, but it's not attached to my version.
Oh, yeah. When you mirror the video, it's not there.
Yep. But yeah. I'll just put the link to your copy that does have the chat if people want to go peruse the chat.
Well, this has definitely been fun, and I'm not even kidding, man. I'm wiping tears. I'm trying not to just make too much fun of this. I wanted to have a semi-serious conversation. I wanted Gandalf to have a chance to lay out what he had, and I don't want to mock Gandalf, and I don't want to mock the subject, but it is a funny subject.
Oh no, it totally is, bro. It's a crazy subject, man. It's like some of the, especially some of the stories like the one I told you, like some of them are out there, like really out there, and you have to be able to discern like the real stuff from the totally whacked out prankster dude getting hit on the side of the road type stuff from the Jerry Crew sightings. It's
so the story you told us about rapist Bigfoot, is that like the most out there story you've got for us? Is there anything more fringy than that?
There are several Bigfoot rape stories, actually. There's more than one. There's the one guy from Kentucky who claimed that Bigfoot raped him, like actually full on raped him. And eventually he was being interviewed and he swore to the news crew that he was going to kill the son of a bitch, quote unquote.
Okay.
So there's some of the most whacked out shit related to Bigfoot. There's stories on this. Like there's thousands of Bigfoot stories. Like it's crazy. Like sorting through them all, it's nuts.
I think I even saw a cable TV show called Hunting Bigfoot, and I'm pretty sure it didn't last very long. But what do you know about that?
Oh, that's one of those terrible looking for Bigfoot shows, man. Dude, they all suck.
Well, of course they do. I mean, Ancient Aliens was cool for a minute until it sucked. And until you thought about it, like really thought about it. And Ancient Aliens is still going strong.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, Bigfoot shows are still going strong.
Yep.
I don't know what it is, man. People like that woo-woo fringy shit. I don't know why. And I'm not doing this to, gain attention because it's woo-woo and fringy, but I'm doing this because Gandalf is into the subject and he wanted to have his chance to talk it out and lay out what he had. So I'm not afraid. Whatever, we can go there for a minute. What, Amy?
Well, I was just thinking that it looks like maybe I need to get going, and I think Gandalf needs to get going.
Okay.
So maybe it's time to end the show.
I hear you. Malibu Bigfoot, Interview with a Bigfoot, Mother Teresa Bigfoot. Oh, they keep coming. You guys are having fun, and I'm glad you guys are having fun because that's what this was about. Really, just covering a silly topic, a fringy topic, and having a little bit of fun with it, and getting it out there, whatever it was. So there it is. Has anybody been moved by any? I mean, Gandalf, have you what year was it that you had your noise encounter where you heard that sound?
2006.
So 12 years you've been kind of serious about the subject.
Oh yeah. Yeah, about 12 years now.
Okay. And so where has your needle on the Bigfoot scale? Has it moved much since then? Or was it just a big jump when you heard the noise and everything you've investigated, never seemed to pan out, right?
Honestly, I was exactly where you are now, in relation to believing in it or not, until around 2010, 2011, when I simply was like, hey, I wonder what the hell, if anyone else has ever heard what I heard. I wonder if anyone's recorded what I heard out in the woods that night. So I type into YouTube search in 2010 or 11. I just type in Bigfoot sounds. The third or fourth video down was called the Ohio Howl, and I'm just like, hell, fuck. none of them, no other noise is region specific. So I clicked on the Ohio Howl, and from being exactly where you are right now, I shot up. I think you're probably around what, like maybe 30% thinking that they could possibly exist.
Uh,
Um,
I don't know if I would go that high, but I would leave the door open for the possibility. That's where I'll leave it there.
well, basically, I shot up from around that to about 50, 60, 70% where I am now within like 30 seconds in 2011.
Well, sure. With an experience like that, I'm sure you had a serious needle jump.
And yeah, since then I've lended credence to any Bigfoot story I hear. I'm always discerning if it's real or not, or if the person's, kind of like a hoaxer. But yeah, like I give it to the possibility higher towards the red or higher towards the green meter than I would towards the red meter of the scale. You know what I mean?
Well, I really hate to end the stream because the chat is just too fun right now. But we're over 3 hours. It's 10:15, and it's probably time for everybody to go find something else to do.
Yeah, well, like I said, I got something I need to get to here really quickly.
Gandalf, I do appreciate you. This was a good chat.
Yeah.
Well, hell yeah. I'm glad we did this. I put it off for long enough. I might as well come out and reveal myself to be the Bigfoot shill I am,
I'm glad you said it. I was about to.
And, honestly, like, I could give a damn if somebody thinks, like, oh, this guy's a little kooky. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I've been around this information for so long to be at the state where I really don't care what somebody thinks about me and how I'm open to different things. I wouldn't have talked about this probably 2-3 years ago, but I'm totally willing to get into this kind of stuff nowadays.
Well, fuck it. We full on shilled for Bigfoot tonight. So
that's right.
we all got our feet wet.
Our big feet wet.
And we still got 34 people watching, so it's not that dead of a subject. Although I really expected a low view count tonight based on the subject. I expected a few people to blow us off and brush us off, but it's been fun. It's been interesting, and again, Gandalf, thanks, man. Thanks for coming out of the Bigfoot closet. And
absolutely.
All right, you guys.
Bro.
So, real quick, y'all, final thoughts, everybody.
Well, don't pussyfoot around stuff, Don't be afraid to let your opinion be heard, because it's your opinion. Don't try and conform to anyone else's kind of narrative that they're pushing on YouTube. Do your own YouTube. Do your own YouTube thing.
Right on.
Start making damn videos, people.
Right on. Good message, Amy.
Get the balls to withdraw consent from this crazy system that we've got going and consent to something much better. See my playlist.
Well, my final thought. Be good to each other.
And
be good to Bigfoot and pick up your trash.
Love you.
All right, love you guys. Let's go ahead and knock it off. I'm not going to do the outro. Let's just.
Okay.
Oh, I suppose I could. I've got it queued up. We could just go ahead and do an outro. Let me just do a quick screen share and get this thing rewound and just 2 seconds, and I'll have us an outro, and we'll call it a night.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for the fun in the chat. It's been a good little convo. And we will see you next week with Michael Cremo. Surgery.
Bye.